A young man rose in the middle of a room, confused as to why he was waking up in the middle of an unfamiliar shack. He's even more surprised when he sees his reflection, since he had the face of a boy he didn't know. While he studied the odd mark on his face, a virtual screen suddenly appeared below him. He screams in shock when it tells him that he's reincarnated as a goblin. Fantasy Frontier is a cutting-edge and world-famous game, so much so that it's rated the highest for any RPG. As someone who plays this all day, the last thing he remembers is falling asleep. After wandering and killing some goblins in-game, he wonders if this is the reason he reincarnated, as a goblin of all things. Still, he doesn't look that different from a normal human. The sync between his memories and the memories of his character begins, and he realizes that he lived a much more difficult life than others ever would. Just then, his sister, Lily, popped into the room with a big smile. Returning it, he warmly promises to get ready. As they strolled the village, she proudly showed off the lunchbox she prepared. Meanwhile, he remembers the scenery they were going through. In fact, it becomes clear that he was in the world of Fantasy Frontier. According to his memories, the siblings are living together as orphans, and he's heading to his master who treats him like a slave. Lily trips and is barely caught before she falls to the ground. Seeing her warm and grateful smile, her brother promises to protect her no matter what happens. It's the least he can do for his dear blind sister. He said that, but he still belongs to the weakest demon race there is. Living well is the dream, but how was he supposed to do that? They soon arrive at the evil merchant's mansion and wave each other goodbye. To provide for them, he usually works as a laborer who cleans the mansion, but the human master was having him move dark ores today. Of course, he has no choice but to shut his mouth and do whatever he's told to do. While lugging ores around, someone suddenly kicked and tipped his wagon over. Butch laughed and degraded him for being useless. While he quietly fixed the wagon, the boy's friends fawned over him, passing the magic school exam. Turning away, they tell the goblin to keep sulking. Goblins truly were at the bottom of the hierarchy. Fortunately, his knowledge of the game should prove to be useful and handy. As he wondered what he could do, he saw a bright light in the sky, and several figures dropping from above. They had a self-righteous feeling. He wondered who they are, and realized that they were wearing special Holy Knight's armor. For demons like them, the enemies were launching an attack. People screamed as the hero's army attacked the village. It's odd how they reached the village much earlier than in the game. The demons were being hacked apart mercilessly. Meanwhile, the human lord was enjoying every moment of it. The goblin looked for his sister and found her alone, hiding by the corner and in tears. They had to get away fast, but Butch and his lackeys kicked them away. Lily was okay, but the small delay was enough to let the humans catch up to them. Unable to escape their cruel grasps, the demons looked up at the enemies. Knowing there was no way for him to win in his current state, he pushes his sister away and tells her to run while he stalls. However, he didn't even last a few seconds, and was already on the brink of death. After going through the trouble of reincarnating into a new life, there he was, dying in just one day. For some reason, he could feel himself floating in a void. A brilliant figure flashed, but she grumbled over how her efforts of reincarnating him were being wasted. Unable to let an entire race go extinct, she opens a virtual screen to grant him some of her power. The goblin obtains all forms of dark magic. The stats on his screen change, and the list of his skills run almost endlessly. He couldn't believe how everything was maxed out all of a sudden. While he won't be able to use everything right away, he'll gradually grasp it over time, telling him to defeat his enemies. The brilliant deity disappears with a flash. The goblin's eyes jerk open, and the first thing he sees is the human targeting his sister. The old man was about to swing when a cold voice suddenly told him to stop. Everyone is surprised to see the older brother walking towards them, still alive. They move to ensure his death once more, but he uses one of his new skills to defeat his enemies. A high-level dark boost surges through his body, and he zooms past the soldiers to take them out in an instant. Brimming with newfound power, he claims his victory overwhelmingly. The old knight was so shocked that he couldn't even hold his sword properly. Before he could do anything, the furious brother was already behind him. When he turns to demand an explanation, his body gets cut down by the goblin they messed with. Lily didn't even know what was going on. The sun set on the wrecked village. Reports of the hero's army being defeated spread, and the people had no idea who there could even do such a thing. The goblins were on the sidelines, not wanting the attention. Lily worries as she hears her brother grunt in pain, but he assures her that he's okay. Butch ran to his father with a big smile on his face. He claims that he's the one who defeated the hero's army on his own, even adding that he used dark magic like he always does. This was enraging, especially as the townspeople began fawning over the bully. The young man brushes it off as a small deed, but tells people to come to their mansion if they want to pay and hear the story. He was after both fame and money. While others offer their riches, Butch sees the goblin siblings and calls them tenacious pieces of trash. Sick of it, The goblin stands up and accuses him of lying about saving the village, even telling him to admit it if he beats him. Eager to take the chance to bully him more, the young man accepts the challenge and launches dark flames from his hands. He cackled at the weakling who dared to go against him and tells the people to watch the magic that saved them from the army. However, a dark energy suddenly engulfed Butch's body. It bared down on him threateningly and questioned if he really did what he was claiming. Despite being crushed by its terrifying talons, he tries to cling on to his lie. Soon enough, he admits that he just hid in a safe house. The dark being disappears with a snap of the goblin's fingers. They were still in the plaza in front of everyone, and he just used an evil eye skill to make his target hallucinate. With this, the liar is exposed and the siblings are free to walk away. The others actually ask the goblin if he's the real savior, but he coldly and flatly rejects the idea, not wanting any attention. Still, as someone who reincarnated as the weakest goblin, he intends to use his newfound power to save this world. The two siblings sat in the middle of the wreckage. While the eventful day has drained their energy, the brother suddenly asks Lily to come close. Reaching out, he uses a high-level curing spell on his blind sister. She was unable to see from the moment she was born, but this just might work. To her surprise, an unfamiliar figure appeared when she opened her eyes. She trembled in shock as she saw her brother and the world for the first time. Smiling, he vaguely says that he can use dark magic now. His unclear explanation is completely unconvincing, but he just brushes it off as him awakening his genius potential. There isn't such a thing for members of the goblin race. Still, he's just glad that she was finally cured of her disability. Hit with reality again, she cries because of her cool big brother. They spend some time together. Later on, the goblin's stats level up once more, and he unlocks the seed goblin fairy. The two are surprised by the unexpected development, more so when a voice excuses herself for interrupting. She can't do anything about it since it's her goddess wish. The tiny fairy has been tasked to escort them to the hidden village of goblins. Tina smiles and asks the strongest and unparalleled mutation to get along with her. He's still stunned by the mention of the hidden village. While they traverse the backwoods of the demon continent, he skeptically looked at the goblin fairy leading the way. Fantasy Frontier is an open world where anything can happen, especially with the highly advanced engine that allows for insane development. Sensing his state, Tina sharply turned back to face him. He brushes it off, and they eventually reach the hidden village as discussed. Even with all his game knowledge, he didn't expect there to be a settlement there. It was covered with concealment magic, blocking others from finding it. The fairy confidently leads the way to the village chief. Several residents turn their heads and whisper, naturally conscious of the unexpected outsider inside their village. A bunch of kids praised Lily and asked her to play somewhere nearby. She doesn't know what to do, so Tina says she can go ahead while they meet with the chief. Despite being flustered, her worries disappear when her brother asks her to play with the kids for a while. She seems to be happier ever since gaining her eyesight. The chief didn't expect there to be descendants aside from them. Just as the goddess prophecy foretold, a fairy would one day lead a young man into the village and be entrusted with a hidden treasure. Could the being who speaks to him be the goddess? The young goblin is told to wait while the elder retrieves something. Left alone, he and the fairy talk about the gentle villagers. However, with such limited food and few resources, they won't last. Other tribes shun and ostracize them, while the hero forces think of them as nothing but stains on their blades. It wasn't natural selection, but deliberate oppression. The village's demise was coming soon. He's struck by her words. After all, goblins were nothing but small fry in the gaming world, and now he's turned into one himself. While he's unable to believe that it's come to this, the elder comes back and hands him a scroll. Unfurling it, he's shocked by what he sees and called out to the chief, who says their tribe is fragile and weak from being shunned by other tribes. As expected, they are on the brink of extinction. Now, they have no choice but to entrust their fate in the chosen one's hands. The room is silent. He turns and sees a bunch of children watching him from the window. Running into the room, they all count down to do something. He's surprised when they close their eyes and beg him to help them in unison. Even the adults came, saying they believe in the goddess prophecy. They all knelt down and touched their heads to the ground, begging him to save them. Later in the forest, the young goblin thinks about his race, and how they actually have a high capability for survival. How could they face imminent extinction despite this? Coupled with the unusually fast progression of the hero's forces, there seems to be something happening behind the scenes. Tina asks why they came out to the forest. Snapping out of his trance, he stands up and says there's something he wants to confirm. He wants to see how well he'll be able to make use of his new abilities. There was no order to it, and he could still unlock a lot more. There's most likely a system to everything behind it. Aside from his magic, his stats are also quite overwhelming on their own. For now, he decides to start things by measuring his physical strength. he unleashes a bare punch on a stone wall and breaks it into pieces. While his companions are left in awe, he continues and follows through with a powerful flare bomb, which nearly blows everything away. A long time passes and he finally finishes his testing. He managed to group his skills together and was getting a hang of his wide variety of skills. All that's left to do is make some final touches. A certain location in the village was marked on the scroll he was given. They soon arrive at the secret cemetery of the Goblin town. It's where the ancestral heroes of the Goblin tribe are laid to rest. There, the Chosen One was going to invoke the most essential dark magic he learned. He casts summoning magic and suddenly has an army of goblins behind him. There was the Hobgoblin, the Gobdragon, the Goblin Girl, and the Goblin General. Even Tina was in awe of what she was witnessing from him. Throughout millennia, even the weakest and lowliest of goblins have rarely given birth to kin with a mutation, or have powers and special abilities of the strongest class. These heroic spirits, who only exist in the past, now all answer to his call. The general kneels and bows to his messiah, asking for his next orders. With his power, he intends to end the war between the hero and demon lord by making them both bow their heads and bring peace to the world. He will become the Goblin Messiah. The Chosen One was in a deep sleep once more, but his slumber was interrupted by a familiar voice. His eyes open wide when the voice loudly orders him to wake up. The divine being finally revealed her true form to him. Met with his shock and confusion, the beautiful woman reveals that she's Farah, the goddess of goblins. He's stunned at first, but realizes how similar she looked to the paintings he saw in the elder's house. That said, she didn't look godly to him, and felt more like an attractive older lady. She scowls at his thoughts but moves on to talk about why she came, which is to explain why she granted him her powers in the first place. He stood in silence and waited for her words. Millions of goblins have died, treated like nothing but low-level life forms. They are regarded as the weakest because of their power, but this is also why they are the strongest. Her words were honestly confusing. With inheritance reincarnation, he now has the knowledge and darkness of their fallen brethren. When millions of the weakest are gathered to form one, they become an unparalleled being. His sister won't be the only one he can save now. As such, she leaves the future of their dying tribe in his hands. The Messiah wakes up on his bed. The sun was shining down on him, who now carried the fate of an entire race on his shoulders. Still, he was determined to create a world that's free of oppression. He then spends some time writing an application letter to the Academy of Dark Magic. Tina watched, skeptical that it would even work, but he was certain that things would go well if he handled it. He wants to create a world where his sister and the villagers can live in peace. To do that, his first target is Dean, one of the 7 greats and the king of the region. As the founder, the academy serves as a training and recruitment ground for his army. If he were to become a cadet, he can get an official audience with him. It would be the perfect opportunity to strike him down. For this mission, he left Lily to stay sheltered in the hidden goblin village. As he promised to be back before she knows it, the little sister asks him to be careful with whatever he's doing. He moves on and asks Tina what she's going to do. Her escorting job is done, but she's decided to tag along, since he's much more interesting than she expected. They travel and arrive at Castle Town, which is in the cruel king's domain. The Academy of Dark Magic shouldn't be too far off, but before they could reach it, they hear loud shouting and see a poor girl kneeling in front of a man. He openly kicks the chained child, despite being in the middle of the town. The onlookers say he's doing it again, as he does when he's in a bad mood. She's a goblin slave, but picking on lower-class races was a norm to him. The Chosen One recognizes Bradley, an infamous slave merchant. In the game, he was a lowly aristocrat who exploited everything for money. Fortunately, his game knowledge was going to come in handy today. He tells Tina that they're going to help the little girl, a statement she already expected him to say. In the dark alley, the Messiah casts the ancestral summoning spell and starts an intricate incantation to call on the goblin girl. His dark magic activates and the narrow path lights up with power. Slowly, a strong but oddly graceful being appeared, reborn from the grave after years. She threw her hands up and yelped, delighted to be alive again after so long. Eve joyfully winks and offers to do whatever her master needs her to. The great ancestor's attitude is more carefree than anyone expected, but the Messiah nonetheless has something important he needs her to do for him. A merciless hand pulls on chains. Bradley screamed demeaning words at Miyu, calling her useless and dragging her body across the hard ground. The Chosen One quietly made his way through the crowd, then called to the slaver, who then asked what he wanted. He asks him to stop hurting the girl, but he says he'll do what he wants to the slave, no matter what the cost. As such, the young man shares his proposition and offers to buy the slave for 100 times the original cost. Bradley is naturally stunned by the unexpected amount. Miyu might be cheap compared to others, but she still costs 30 gold. Regardless, the young man says he's already prepared 100 times that amount. Eve tosses pouch after pouch of money in front of Bradley, who's shocked to find 3,000 gold coins before him. Just like that, they finalize their deal, and the slaver gathers the money, saying he can't change his mind later on. As he happily left in his carriage, Miyu carefully asked why someone would buy her for so much. He reveals his identity as a goblin like her, who just wants to help. Still, she doesn't understand why he would spend that amount of money, so he reveals that he didn't actually use his own money. Bradley always keeps a stash of gold in his carriage for transactions. He knows this because of his experience with the game. Using this knowledge, he asked Eve to use her stealth and penetration skills to steal the money during their conversation. The slaver got all of it through criminal activity, so no one can blame them. Most of all, he doesn't want to let slavery exist in that world. The two goblins chuckle at his brilliant acting earlier. He reaches out to the girl and asks if she can stand. After a moment of hesitation, she takes his hands and thanks him for his help. He asks Tina to guide Miyu back to the village, while he goes ahead and takes the entrance exam to the Dark Academy. After all, he intends to stand at the top of that place. They part ways for now, and he reaches the Academy's main gate in no time. Enrollment is always ongoing, but one's abilities must be that of a genius to even get admitted. By that logic, even the lowest rank race can enter if they are strong enough. Becoming an elite cadet here might earn him an audience with Dean. Applicants are called on to line up for the examination. It was a fairly long line, but he heads to the back, where someone lightly taps on his shoulder. He turns and sees a girl cautiously looking right at him. Seeming to have something to say, she unexpectedly asks if he has anything sweet to eat. He's surprised but fishes through his pockets anyway. He sees a pouch of cookies, specially made by Lily to cheer him on during the application. Without his permission, the girl thanks him and takes the pouch from his hands, even smiling brightly while munching on the snacks. He nearly screams in disbelief and sulks hard, but she just goes on about how she loses darkness when she's hungry. It goes back to normal once she eats something with sugar. Unfortunately, he didn't care, given how she ate his sister's handmade treats. Terrified, she awkwardly asks if she made a mistake, and later apologizes repeatedly when she's finally told what she did wrong. After glaring at her for a while, he rattles on about why it frustrated him so much. Regardless, she promises to return the favor, and introduces herself as Letty. He can't return the introduction, as someone without a name. Even after going through his memories, he couldn't remember anything, which is the usual case for low-class monsters or slaves. Instead of looking down at him, the girl suddenly says she'll give him one. Before he could even protest, she names him Lime, since he's a bit green. He chuckles at her choice but accepts it nonetheless. With this, they officially introduce themselves to each other and start their friendship. Just then, the examinees are told to gather at the central plaza. While they agreed to both do their best and pass, someone else watched from nearby, already judging the goblin for being there. Applicants gathered at the central plaza of the Dark Academy, and the examination went on with everyone firing spells, one after the other. Proctors continued to record scores, and Letty's turn finally came. She had a confident expression as she summoned magic onto her palms and waved her hands to cut a target dummy apart. People are in awe of her power, but already expected it since they know her identity as the princess of the evil elves tribe. Lime is the only one surprised to hear who she is, especially given her contrastingly bubbly attitude. Her position makes him consider reevaluating how he treats her. She was proud of her handiwork for this stage, and is even happier to hear that she should easily be able to pass. Someone stepped onto the grounds, saying there was an incompetent guy making noise. It was Hugo, the vampire. Looking at the goblin, he asks what a servant from Butch's place was doing there, and laughs at the idea of someone like him also taking the entrance exam. While Lime turns his back uncaringly, Letty stands her ground and speaks for him without hesitation. She goes on about how the goblin is so much better than him, a bold statement for someone she just met a few minutes ago. Hugo turns away, saying they'll get exposed soon enough, and leaving her with a bad taste in her mouth. With this, she tells Lime to do something amazing to shut everyone up, so he just says that he'll do his best. That said, the entire plaza might blow up if he does things diligently. He went all out during his trials, and this is the first time he'll actually try to control his power. The instructor tells him to hurry up already, so he takes a deep breath and releases some magic from his fingertips. However, a huge blast of dark energy shot out, nearly blowing everyone away and digging a path across the ground. They're stunned and shocked, not expecting such a jaw-dropping display from a mere goblin. Apparently, he can't control his power well yet. People haven't recovered from the surprise, and Letty was jumping in joy and pride at what he just did. Still not wanting too much attention, he calls it a fluke and a lucky accident. After the written exam later on, Lime sees the elf looking troubled. She was worried about the test and asked if he thought he did well. Despite his vague answer, he knows he gathered enough knowledge from the game to pass. Hugo suddenly appeared, telling him not to get carried away by his fluke earlier. The goblin tells him to worry about himself instead of paying attention to others, which just provokes the vampire enough to draw his blade. Fortunately, an announcement interrupts them before the altercation could escalate. Hugo turns away, saying he's lucky and telling him to remember this. It was finally time to begin the combat examinations, which will be different this time. It used to be one-on-one duels, but now they'll have just one target for everyone. The examinees are all confused by the unexpected change and try to figure out what he means. It's a new policy set by Dean, the founder himself, who said a student of the academy must survive against opponents that are stronger. They all waited and anticipated as the gates rose from the ground. Nerves and tensions skyrocketed when they saw the glow of beastly eyes behind the gate. The first step towards the light came from heavy claws, and it came with the loud roar of the thunder dragon. Such a beast usually appears as an area boss near the end of the game. It was ridiculous for it to be the combat exam's target. The academy was ridiculously making applicants fight such a strong enemy. Naturally, people ran as soon as the dragon made a move. After raising its head and charging up, it unleashed a terrifying blast that was aimed right at the fleeing examinees. The attack explodes upon making contact, leaving several gravely injured on the ground. Hugo freezes, not expecting anything like this at all. Letty was also still, but in a different way. She finishes observing and actually dashed towards the beast, taking most of them by surprise. The girl was determined to do anything to pass the exam, for the sake of everyone in the kingdom. A wind-binding spell is cast, and latches onto the enormous target like solid chains. To finish it off, she conjures and aims a huge wind arrow, but she freezes when she sees the dragon, struggling and freeing itself right in front of her. Not expecting it to escape, she came too close, and now had no way of dodging its next attack. She was going to die. However, the attack doesn't come. She opens her eyes and sees a lone man holding the entire dragon back. It was Lime, barely even breaking a sweat while protecting her, and even turning calmly to check if she got injured in any way. He asks her to wait a bit, adding that he'll end things quickly. Although she's skeptical of his claim, the goblin continues to hold the enemy back. It raises its body with a loud roar, and the single spike on its head began to glow brightly. The sky rumbled and lightning struck down from the dark clouds, hitting the dragon's body and charging its horn with immense power. Now, much stronger, it easily breaks Lime's barrier and shoots a point-blank blast that forces the applicants to dodge. It's much more troublesome, now that it's in its super armor state. Letty was more concerned that they were flying in the sky, saying it might take more time. The goblin apologizes, tells her to wait, and throws her right on the rooftop. She screams when she realizes that she's falling, but suddenly finds herself plopping onto something soft and mushy. It was the goblin jelly, the only amorphous goblin summoning there is. Meanwhile, the dragon hadn't looked up yet, and was unaware of the young man targeting it from above. Lime boosts his dark magic with a high-level spell, and dove down to take the enemy out. The beast finally notices and launches an attack that tears through the sky, but he easily outmaneuvers each and every attack that's sent towards him. With his speed, dodging and closing the distance between them was easy work, and he soon landed a heavy kick right at the monster's face. It's so strong that the enormous dragon crashes onto the walls of the arena. It jumped back out, causing some of the debris to scare the others, but it was now more enraged than ever before. Still, Lime is eager to make it fight with all it has. The young man's goading works, and the dragon glares. The sky crackled as the dragon summoned a thunder cloud, just as planned. Lime suddenly appeared behind Hugo, and took his sword to borrow it for a quick moment. He's gone before the vampire could even say anything, and was already coating the blade with the dark element. Meeting the clouds, he raises the steel weapon to absorb the lightning strike. It acts as an anchor to take all that power, and he uses the thunder dragon's own lightning bolt against it. The beast couldn't do anything but stand and take the devastating blow. When the dust settles, everyone sees the target on the ground, smoking and unconscious. Lime levels up from the encounter, and acquires the demonic sword, Majnor. Meanwhile, the examiner watched from the sidelines, surprised and taking note to report the incident to the dean. Every applicant there had their jaws down out of shock, but the goblin simply announces the conclusion of the combat examination. Several hours later, Lime and Letty looked up at the announcement board, and saw their names on the list of accepted students. The elf understands why he's there, but doesn't know why she was included as well. The instructors likely evaluated her by how she dove in without hesitation. He then notices her long full name, which is hard to pronounce, so they agree to stick to Letty for now. Just then, she remembers something important. He's listed as an unnamed individual, so she strikes it out and replaces it with Lime. After all, he already has the name she gave her to use. He can only chuckle at her brazenness. Later on, two are given their school uniforms, and the sight of them wearing it really makes it feel official. They're also given their grimoire and robes, which match the original uniforms perfectly. Now, They have to take a placement test for the dormitory system. This is unexpected, but it's standard procedure to determine their darkness and the dorm they'll enter. The staff later came back with a large tool, and people were gathered around the area to see how the test would go. With a demeaning look, he says he looks forward to seeing their results. The news of their victory in the hardest combat examination has spread, but now people are doubting the difficulty, given the passer's race. Letty is furious by their insulting remarks, but Lime asks her to calm down for now, as it isn't the time to fight. While she quiets down with a pout, he asks what the placement exam is about. They just have to stand in front of the magical construct, which will analyze their darkness. Once they touch the screen, the results will be displayed for all to see. Incidentally, the state-of-the-art tool is something they just received from the school, meaning there's no way to cheat or manipulate it. To start off, Letty is called to step forward. She does as told and places her hand on the screen. The display immediately pops up, and everyone falls into disbelief when they see her results. While everyone was shocked by the amazing level of the evil elf's darkness, Line studied it calmly, saying she has a lot of potential to be a reliable fighter. With this, the optimal dorm for her is Lucifer, which is the highest-ranking one. No one doubts the elf's results, but it was time for the goblin to take his turn. The proctor already expects a low result based on his race alone. On the other hand, Lime was curious how much he had grown, and poured all his darkness in. Seeing the machine hum and vibrate, the staff started to worry out of confusion. Suddenly, the entire tool burst apart, unable to handle the darkness it was being fed. The explosion nearly blows the people away. Both the proctor and the test taker was in disbelief of what he just did. Lime realizes his mistake, especially when the man screams over the destruction of his expensive tool. A malfunction was impossible, and now he had to think of a way to tell the dean. The young goblin tries to apologize, but he wasn't hearing it, and assigns him to the lowest ranked dorm, saying he couldn't be measured. This was terrible, and would only make it harder for him to have an audience with Dean. While someone else watched from nearby, Lime was already thinking about what he can do to reach the founder faster. In the lowest ranking dorm, the young man spent the night thinking about his objective, which is to be chosen as an elite cadet. Doing so would allow him to meet and defeat the cruel king, but his chances are now much lower after being placed in the seer dorm. He considers having Letty pull some strings to get him to a better dorm. Just then, he notices something wedged in between the pages of his book. The contents of the paper is just what he was looking for. Later on, he surprises another student by registering to participate in the magic tournament. It's an annual competition that's held to decide the school's strongest mage. It's also a long-standing tradition to only let the most skilled students enter. Dean will personally bestow the victor with magical treasure as commemoration. In other words, this is his other ticket to having an audience with his target. As it's only been a couple of days since Lime enrolled at the school, he's warned about the dangers of the ruthless tournament. He understands all of this, but still wishes to participate nonetheless. Still skeptical, the poor staff member asks for some time and makes a call. One of the professors, Eddie, is told about the strange student, who he immediately guesses is the one who broke the magic measurement device. Asked if he should be turned away, he smirks and permits the young goblin's brave endeavor. With this, Lime's application for the tournament is accepted, and he's reminded one last time that all incidents that happen during will come at his own risk. He's found his shortcut, and now all Dean has to do is wait. In the girls' only building of the Lucifer dorm, the residents were ending their day with a hot shower. Letty was with them, and smiling as she thought of how nice it was to have met Lime in the entrance exam. Blushing as she remembered how he saved then tossed her away, she tries to get a hold of herself. Whenever she sees the goblin, she feels like he's going to do great things. He can't take her eyes off or leave his side. To her surprise, her heart suddenly beats fast from her thoughts. In the seer dorm, Lime opened his eyes and got out of his bed in the middle of the night. Alone and hidden, he summons Eve, who's ready to grant his every order. She's told to use her powers to infiltrate the school, so she immediately dons a girl's uniform. With this, she'll be free to check and investigate each of the academy's facilities. Another one should be there soon. As soon as he says this, Tina appears out of thin air, saying she left Miyu with Lily. Her words grant him some relief. He moves on fast and asks her to map out a full view of the school. After bickering over the confusing words he's using, the fairy goes ahead and does as told, but also asks what he intends to do while she's working. Looking over the campus, he points to the large building nearby, which is his next target. It's a stealth mission towards the Academy Dean's Tower. He uses a high-level dark concealment spell. While this might not go completely undetected, it should be enough for now. There was an ongoing meeting of important people inside. At the head of the table was Wesker, the school dean. Accompanying him were Mila, the operations director of the magic tournament, Eddie, one of the professors, and Gaia, the student council president. Eddie states that their subject is a threat. They can't predict Lime's actions, and he has no place in their traditions. They also talk about him monopolizing enrollment by defeating the dragon alone. Still, this speaks of the extraordinary strength he might possess. The professor argues that their students need premium lineage on top of power, something the Goblin tribe, which is the lowest of the low, does not have. Their proposal is to expose the student's true nature at the magic tournament. Since he entered on his own, his death would completely be his responsibility. After all, such incidents are not uncommon during the competition. Some even consider placing a racial ban for the applications to the tournament, saying they of all people have to protect their honorable traditions. It seems the corruption among the school's higher-ups is still very prevalent. Wesker's eyes shift in Lime's direction, but he doesn't say a word. Instead, he allows the others to do what they want, and stands up to head to bed. Some sigh at his actions and wonder if he's going senile. Eddie is going to rig the competition and match Lime with someone from Gaia's faction. He wants them to cause an unforeseen incident and places the school's dignity on their shoulders. The Dragonian accepts. Little did they know that the Goblin was listening the entire time and was glad to have a worthy opponent. Mila chuckles at the nobleman, who is going all out against a mere goblin. Eddie argues that this is no laughing matter in any way, but her words just give Lime an unexpectedly nice piece of information. Later on, he meets with Eve to talk about her findings. She reveals that there's an entrance to a suspicious underground warehouse in the school library. Additionally, Tina hands him the bird's-eye view map of the campus. He thanks them both and wants to call it a night for now. However, he hears some grunting not too far away. A lone man swung his blade at night, sweating hard from the seemingly endless training he was doing. Lime can't help but admire the young man's dedication, more so when Tina shares that he's been swinging since she started mapping the school. The kobold dorm mate continued with his drill, a sight that gives the Goblin some hope for the entire place. Once he's back in his room, he stops in front of his bed and calls out to the fairy. She was lying on his bed with her eyes closed, seemingly intending to sleep there, and questioning if he'd really let a fair maiden like her sleep on the floor. She considers using other methods of persuasion to change his mind, but he flatly rejects her advances without missing a beat. Tina pushes his buttons even further, and transforms herself into a more human-looking version of herself. This only tires him out even more, and he no longer has any energy to joke around. That said, she knows that several people wouldn't like it if she did something to him. She turned around and continued to sleep on his bed, so he has no choice but to sigh deeply and summarize the findings of his mission before he gets too busy tomorrow. The next morning, they're in the Academy's dining hall. While eating alone, Lime spots Letty with some friends a few tables away. As soon as she notices him as well, a smile lights up, and she happily waved in his direction. It isn't a good idea to sit with girls from the highest-ranked dorm, so he continued to mind his own business and think about the tournament. Just then, someone asked to sit next to him. He turns and sees a familiar face. It's the kobold student who was practicing endlessly last night. The two make some small talk and look forward to working with each other. Lute then confirms that the Goblin actually registered for the magic tournament. Right as he shares that he did so too, a couple of men appeared behind him. A large student named Nero put his arm around the kobold, scolding him for eating there. He sheepishly reasons that it doesn't matter where he eats, but the bully refuses to let a low-rank monster in there, except when doing errands. Lute still tried to push back, albeit with little to no confidence, so it was time for Lime to step in and stand against the injustice on his own. Nero glared at the young man, who identified himself as a goblin, and asked if he can't be there either. The bully glared at the student, who was obviously new to the school. With an evil grin, he offers to personally teach him the rules of their academy. He and his lackeys circle the Goblin, who doesn't bat an eye, and says they're more than welcome to give it a try. Meanwhile, Lute was feeling guilty for causing all of this. The bully cracked his knuckles as he looked down at his next target, saying a newbie like him should mind his business. Nero swung, but his fist was easily deflected by a single raised arm. They're all stunned and gasp at what they witnessed. Not done yet, Lime grabbed the student's wrist tight. Causing a commotion would give him a bad impression, so he intends to settle it quietly. The large man fell to his knees in pain, and neither he nor the others could understand how the opponent was so strong. When he finally lets go, the marks of his grip left a red mark, and the bully pathetically whines on the floor. Lime glared at his eyes, saying anyone is free to come to the cafeteria. Nero glared back, until his friends finally called to him, saying the Goblin is the freshman, who supposedly took the Thunder Dragon down with one strike. He gets back up on his feet to leave, but reveals that the Breath of Flame faction was already targeting him anyway. In other words, he won't last long. Lime couldn't care less and walked away. Lute then sheepishly approached and apologized for dragging him into trouble. He shares that he also applied to participate in the tournament and wants to test his strength to leave the bullies dumbfounded. Still, Even he doesn't think that he has a chance to win. There was an awkward silence, and the kobold finally realized that he hadn't introduced himself properly yet. However, Lime's eyes shot open when he heard Lute's name. He presses him out of surprise and confirms his identity. They haven't met in this life yet, but in the game, he's the most powerful knight who'll hunt down the hero's forces until the very end. The two head back to the dorm and wave goodbye for now. But the goblin suddenly called and asked if he could join his new friend's midnight training sessions. The kobold is glad to have someone beside him as he tries his best. There's another matter more important than that. His sister is a nun of the Dark Church within one of the Seven Greats territory. In the near future, she'll go to a neighboring village for missionary work. When that time comes, he must tell her to come straight home, and not to look back at all. He insists on the kobold honoring the favor, saying it's repayment for the earlier incident. Lute is taken off guard but accepts nonetheless. With that settled, they finally part ways for the night. Tina appears, guessing that her master must be plotting something. Lime thinks he changed the young man's fate successfully. The death of his sister drove him to evil. Now, he must awaken him while keeping his sister alive. Several days later, the academy's backyard was busy. Lime was standing in the middle of the forest, surrounded by targets. He gathers magic and hits everything with one quick wave of his hand. While he's satisfied with his results, Lute was doing his best to concentrate. As soon as he opened his eyes, he stepped in with intense concentration and swung his blade. It releases a slash that cuts the waterfall's current for a moment, and he's shocked that he actually managed to do it. He was elated, unable to believe that his swordsmanship was improving so fast. It's all thanks to Lime, who's skilled at sword fighting as he is in magic, so much so that he wonders why he was even put in the lowest ranking dorm. Tomorrow finally marks the beginning of the tournament. Since it'll be their last night of training together, the goblin has something to say. He commends the kobold's efforts, adding that his mindset is his best weapon. Still, he's realized something after training with him for the past few days. He hasn't unlocked his true potential just yet. It's something that manifests from being shaken to the core, a pain he'd never want to feel again, but he doesn't want Lute to go through that. Unfortunately, he might live his life without knowing his true strength. Without it, Lime asks his friend to close his eyes for a moment. Holding his hand out, the goblin casts sinister analysis and takes a deep look. It's true that most of the darkness in his body is in a dormant state. It's as if he's running at full speed with iron weights chained to him, and it's actually impressive how he's managed to grow in spite of it. Once he removes his shackles, he should develop exponentially, even without the tragedy. Lime tells his friend not to move and, with dark magic, strikes his core to free him from his stasis. Lute jerks back from the impact, but he's just told that it should be okay now. He sits down, feeling like he was just pierced by something. It was a big day tomorrow, so the two young men decided to call it a night and rest. The next day, everyone gathers at the Colosseum. The people cheered during the magic tournament's opening ceremony, and the participants entered the arena one by one. Mila welcomed everyone and announced the beginning as the competition director. The glorious moments of battle will begin soon enough, but for now, she calls on the Academy founder to give a speech. A magic circle appeared, and from it emerged a dark figure. Lime watched closely. It's similar to his goblin summon magic, but it's more of a hologram. Dean's voice reaches the bright students of the Academy, and he tells them to demonstrate the limits of the abilities they've honed so far. Telling the weak to yield, he ends the speech, and the Colosseum immediately roars with cheers once more. Letty didn't share their excitement. The king's persecution and taxes is the reason why the goblin village is suffering, so Lime is determined to win the competition and take him down. Lime looked at the lineup on his own. There will be 6 matches, but stamina shouldn't be an issue, so he can go all out from the start. While checking his first opponent, a cold glass suddenly touched his face. His voice rang throughout the area as he screamed out of surprise. While he backed away as far as possible, Letty laughed, saying she didn't know he could be so loud. She called him while they were in the arena, but he ignored her completely. Not buying his excuse of it being too loud, she asks how he got in when freshmen aren't allowed to enter. When he says that it's just a tradition more than it is a rule, she goes all quiet. The elf finds it odd how he wants to fight the school's strongest, despite being in his first year. He really was a strange one after all. The goblin chuckles, finding her a lot stranger than he is, but she's annoyed by how he acts like a grown-up all of the time. Remembering something, she moves on and hands him a pouch. His eyes brighten up when he realizes what's inside. It's a bunch of snacks, her payment for when she ate Lily's baked goods when they first met. She felt bad all this time and wanted to make it up to him. The treats are handmade, but she awkwardly insists that it doesn't mean anything. Her face turns red and hot out of embarrassment. Regardless, her actions have made him happy. Letty's sheepishness reaches its limits. Fortunately, it was time to head back, so she reaches out and bids him good luck. Lime accepts the gesture and walks off with a grateful wave to his friend, whose heart was beating all fast again. A while later, the contestants of the round are called on. First is the Goblin from Seer Dorm, who shattered conventions before even getting enrolled. His opponent is Orphan from the Lucifer Dorm, who's a member of the Breath of Flame faction. The girls fawn over the Dragonian and tell him to wipe the Goblin out. He's the second-ranked member of the faction, just behind Gaia. While Wesker silently watched, Lime is asked one more time if he doesn't need a weapon. His opponent chuckles, saying he's being underestimated. Without further ado, they officially begin the match. Orphan leaps to the sky, intending to end things in an instant, and activates his wyvern form. People are surprised that he was going all out right from the start. He imbues his lance with elemental coating and dove in to turn the low-ranked monster into ashes. Lime can't help but be bored by the predictable attack, but, to his surprise, the ground beneath him cracked open. Chains from the earth shot up and latched onto his limbs, preventing him from moving an inch. It's a surprising development, and Orphan had no intention of playing fair against such an enemy. He goes on for the kill. Still, Lime stood his ground and faced him head-on. A clouded figure was controlling the chains that bound Lime. Her name is Rin, the third-ranked in the Dragonian faction, whose green dragon form allows her to manipulate all kinds of plant life. Considering their cheating as preparations, Orphan dove in for the kill. The two make contact and their clash sends dust and rocks all throughout the arena, earning a strong reaction from the crowd. However, things aren't as they seem. Lime had freed himself and blocked the lance with his demonic sword, Maginor. The cheater can't believe it, but there was no time for that as the Goblin was already moving to his blind spot. A quick strike from behind forces Orphan to the ground and knocks him out cold. Since he's no longer able to fight, the contender asks if the match is over, prompting the surprise referee to declare him as the winner. The crowd goes wild from the unexpected result, and the conniving professors are equally stunned by how it turned out. The boy hides it well, but Wesker has noticed that his darkness is already triple S rank. Letty cheered in delight. After getting through the first round, Lime walked the halls alone. To his surprise, he sees Lily, Tina, and Miyu all together to greet him. The fairy disguised them, as they were insistent on watching him compete. With their praise and excitement over his performance, he pats their head, glad to see the two in good spirits after a long time. They hand him a wrapped gift, saying they put their best effort into making it for him. He's pleased to find a baked pie, glistening and ready to eat. The older brother turns to both girls and thanks them both for all the effort, so they wish him luck on the next match before heading back to the stands. He spends some time in the participant waiting room and stands up as it should be time for the next battle soon. Just then, a girl burst in, saying his companions from earlier suddenly collapsed. The worried brother rushes to the scene as fast as possible, thinking only about the girl's safety. He reaches the place where they should be in no time, but sees no one there. The student who called him out there appeared with a sly smile. Before he could react, vines not unlike the ones from earlier latched onto his ankles. He realizes that he let his guard down because of the mention of his sister. As expected, Rin was making her move to prevent him from even reaching the arena. Lime easily frees himself from her power, but she already knows quite well that it won't work. She simply wanted to stall him long enough for the rest of them to show up. The entire order of Dragonians, including Gaia, were there to fight him right there. No one is going to notice his death, which will be staged as an unfortunate accident. Despite the disadvantage, the Goblin was completely unbothered. The faction chuckles, mistaking his silence for fear, but their target says that 3 minutes should be more than enough. He'll wrap things up there within that time, otherwise he'll be late for his next match. His arrogant and bold statement infuriates Gaia. Enraged, Gaia had decided not to hold back even a tiny bit, and was committed to killing the target on the spot. That said, they're the ones who should prepare themselves. Lime was going to do the same, and stop holding back, to end things fast. After all, he has to make it in time to attend the second round. With a strong burst of flames, the faction leader transforms into his salamander form. Using a high-level elemental spell, he launches a powerful blast of fire from his mouth. Lime pushes his hand out and uses even stronger magic to create a barrier that completely blocks his attack. It's amazing indeed, but several others appear behind him, saying he's left his back wide open. Still, none of that matters as he can easily block their strike with Maginor. He casts his own flare bomb almost instantly, burning and driving the foolish challengers away. Gaia had used this time to charge another attack, which he uses in a barrage with all the other members of his faction. They have the target surrounded. A huge explosion from their spells makes the ground shake. It feels like they won, but only for a moment. Lime appears behind a few lackeys, completely unharmed despite their collective efforts. He doesn't even need magic, and just takes the first batch out with pure swordsmanship. Those farther away jerk and convulse as a beam of electricity hits them. There was no one left. That is, except for the leader who was burning with rage. Gaia explodes and takes on his final dragonian form. At this point, Lime was against a full dragon, but there wasn't a hint of fear as he used dark magic to boost his abilities. He drives a punch through his opponent's jaw, forcing his head high up in the air and leaving his body completely open. With this, the goblin plants a devastating blow through his torso. These few hits are enough to knock Gaia out cold, and he soon topples to the ground with a heavy thud. As he reverts back to his original form, Lime dusts himself off and turns to Rin, who was shaking as she hid by the wall. He walks to her and asks how long the fight took, even repeating the question for the bewildered student. Shaking, she says it took 2 minutes and 30 seconds, just as he said. He heads back to the arena, satisfied with the outcome. The girl falls to the ground in disbelief. It was the second round of the tournament. Lime appears as the contender, but his dragonian opponent was nowhere to be found. In accordance with the rules, a fighter who fails to show up loses by default. The goblin winner realizes that it must be one of the students he fought earlier. People are surprised by the disqualification. Wesker chuckles at the default win, musing at what could have happened. The ladies aren't sure what took place either, but are happy regardless. However, the same thing happened with the third and fourth matches, meaning Lime defeated most of the opponents in the ambush earlier. Eddie was getting sick of it, and it wasn't until the last match that he finally got a proper contender. The goblin already knew who it was going to be, and wouldn't have had it any other way. Standing before him was his friend, Lute. Using his dark magic, he takes a look at the kobold's stats, and sees that he's already awakened into Dark Knight, just a day after his help. Now, he should be able to keep his sister safe on his own. The two are glad to see each other, and are thankful. It was time to start their match, but the young swordsman suddenly let go of his weapon and put his hands up, forfeiting before they could even begin. Offering the victory is his way of expressing his gratitude towards his friend, who then argues that the best way to thank him is to have a real duel. The air shifts with his request, as Lute holds his blade once more. He smiles, asking if he's sure and warning that he might not be able to hold back. His growth makes Lime grin with excitement. Both fighters charged in as soon as the referee signaled, and the crowd was stunned by the clash of their blades. They seem evenly matched for now, but there was so much pressure from the sword of the man who'll become the strongest warrior. When they push each other back, Lute resheathes his weapon for a sword-drawing slash. A Dark Knight has the ability to emit a vast amount of darkness as magic. His style revolves around using that to enhance his physical abilities, but he's still too naive and fresh. Lime deflects and counters with his own attack, making the crowd gasp in amazement of their strength. The corrupt professors only want the goblin taken care of. Countless exchanges were happening in the arena, and the match was only getting more intense by the second. Noticing his opponent trip, Lute finds his opening and dashes in to take advantage of it. The goblin barely manages to move his head away. His opponent has overextended, so he uses this chance to break the kobold's blade in half. Lime imbued his sword with darkness, ready to end the battle. Lime swings his blade, but Lute somehow manages to fall back just in time to dodge. His clothes were torn, but the attack didn't reach his skin. Still, the unexpected reaction is making the goblin more excited. He sees his opponent toss his broken blade, finding no use for it in the match, so he responds by relinquishing Maginor as well. It's a surprising move. Dark Knights are weak against spells, but Lime has no intention of winning by exploiting that. They'll fight head-on as a true test of skill. Lute smiles at his friend's challenge. He says he doesn't mean any respect, and just wants to enjoy having a real fight. Energy overflows all throughout the thrilled kobold's body, eager to make him regret those words. The spiking tension on the battlefield makes the referee run, and the two charge at each other to head to the final stages. Their fists clash endlessly. It was such an intense battle, but Lute couldn't help but feel strangely excited from it all. He wants to win against his opponent, but doesn't want the battle to end. The more their blows collide, the more he wants to grow even stronger. The impact of their fists shakes the entire arena. Backing away for now, Lime is surprised to see the Dark Knight getting even stronger during their match. He might lose if this drags on, so he has to win with the next attack. With impressive speed, he flashed forward to strike him down, but his fist just went through the still target's body. Confusion hits when he turns around and sees a fading after image. He barely evades the next kick as he realizes that Lute just used Time Stop, a Dark Knight's highest level skill. The exponential growth caught him off guard, but he's still better. Lime pours every last bit of his darkness into his physical abilities, and unleashes a hand-to-hand barrage at the kobold. His wrist is caught and the knight counters with a kick, but it's the goblin's turn to surprise him by disappearing all of a sudden. Lute was tricked into targeting his opponent's mere presence, and has left himself open to an attack from behind. He fails to move fast enough and receives a hit that sends him crashing into the wall. This time, it's powerful enough to knock him out and end the match. Finally, Lime is announced as the victor and champion of the battle. he walked towards his unconscious friend, smiling as he acknowledged how strong he's grown. At the awarding ceremony of the magic tournament, Lime meets with the organizers, where the corrupt professors begrudgingly congratulate him on his win. The dean grants him his trophy as proof of his victory. As for his magical treasure, Dean will personally bestow it soon enough. With this, his goal was now within his reach. Right as he was about to leave, Wesker suddenly stopped him and, with a calm gaze, asked who he was exactly. In just a week since enrollment, he's already defeated all of the school's elites, part of which was done outside of the tournament premises. In other words, he's an irregular who defies all common sense. The dean frankly says that he must already be aware that the tournament set him up. He plans to hold the ones who plotted this accountable, including himself. He then bows his head to apologize for conspiring against the student. Lime says there's no need, as he's just another student who wanted to win. Deep inside, he's surprised that such a good-natured demon exists. The reality was getting further and further away from his game knowledge. In this case, Wesker asks him what he thinks their academy lacks. The young goblin notes the bias in enrollment, due to those in the upper ranks. He and his kobold friend were belittled from the start, just because of their race. While this is where the school fails, the system isn't bad, and just needs to be refocused towards the students' abilities. After all, corrupt professors will produce corrupt students. The dean promises reforms, starting by firing Eddie and Mila from their positions. While the goblin smiles, the professors shudder at the unexpected development. Later on, Lime regroups with Lute, and the two congratulate each other on their achievements for the day. They were both surprised by how enjoyable it was to fight each other. Just then, the goblin says he has a favor he'd like to ask of his friend, who immediately perks up and says he's willing to do anything he asks. His tail wagged with eagerness, but it stops when Lime reveals that he'll be leaving the school very soon. He just enrolled, but there's something more important that he has to do. Still, he promises to come back one day. Reaching out, he asks Lute to be his ally when that time comes. The kobold naturally accepts, so he reveals that it might mean making an enemy of the Demon King's army. It confuses him, but seeing his friend's sincere expression makes that all go away. With an assured smile, he accepts Lime's hand and promises to be by his side, no matter what happens. The goblin is grateful for his friend's loyalty, and suddenly mentions something about his fighting style. It's too honest, so he should fight against cunning opponents to improve himself. Lute takes note and says he'll work on it while he's gone. With this, they wave each other goodbye and part ways for the day. As the sun was about to set, a couple of bright voices closed in. Lily and Miyu suddenly hugged Lime, congratulating him on his win. They showered him with endless praise, saying they'll brag about him to everyone in the village, and asking him to make some time to stop by for a while. While he thanked them for their support, a familiar figure watched from the woods nearby. Letty was shocked by the sight of the cute and unfamiliar girls clinging to her friend. She herself finds it odd that she was hiding, but continued to do so. Meanwhile, Lime unlocks even more of his dark abilities. Lime returns to the hidden village using fast travel. It's only been a week since he left, but it feels like so long. The children happily exclaim at the sight of their messiah, and immediately spread the news to the others. They gathered around him, even noticing the lavish uniform he was now wearing. Just then, he sees the chief watching nearby, and smiles as he gestures for him to follow. Residents were farming and having picnics. Compared to when he first came, the village has grown abundant, and it's all thanks to him. Fortunately, the advice he imparted before leaving proved to be helpful. Back then, he noted the reason why it was so hard to preserve their population. He was right, of course, but it felt like they had no other option, as this was the only way to escape their oppressors. To the chief's surprise, the savior said someone defiled their land on purpose. The news is shocking to the elder, but Lime emphasizes how he saw a contamination spell cast over the entire village. Most ordinary goblins won't see it. If they cleanse the contamination, the residents can prosper again, and the only way to do that is by force. The savior headed out to face the magic circle, which is the hub of the contamination. In the game, it'd be impossible for weak goblins to even perceive it, but it's clear to him that someone is intentionally culling their flourishing population. He stared at it for a while, burning the circle into his eyes. Finally, he destroyed it with one swift swing of his blade, and added another name to the list of enemies he has to defeat. From that moment on, fresh water should come to the ground, and crops should flourish. Things happened as he intended, and the town prospered as soon as the contamination left. The two little girls offer him their home cooking while he's there, making the other children cheer in delight. As such, the village has a simple gathering filled with food, allowing him a brief moment of respite. The villagers lined up and smiled returned to their faces. In fact, they would be overjoyed if the goddess were to make an appearance right then. The next morning, Lime is happily greeted by the two girls. To their surprise, he had already finished his preparations and was ready to return to head out. While he thanked the two for making sure that he got a good night's rest, Miyu fished something out of her pocket. She hands him a simple pendant, saying she and Lily made it together. It's a good luck charm that should help him win his battles. Expressing their affection for one another, they finally say goodbye for now. The time has finally come, and his clash with the formidable and cruel king was drawing closer. Fortunately, he has Dean's fighting style etched into his head, so there's no way he could lose the fight. Tina has been wondering for a while how he seems to know everything. Despite not being granted the goddess clairvoyance skill, she comes close and asks if he really is a goblin. Chuckling through her suspicions, he assures her that he's just an ordinary goblin. Now, it's time to take down the master of the domain. Dean was sitting in his throne room, well aware that a goblin, whose race is on the brink of extinction, was headed there. In Dean's castle, a guard stands at attention as he notices a figure approaching the gates. He demands to know who it is, and says it's no place for a low-ranked monster like him. To his surprise, Lime raises a document, proving his identity as the tournament champion. The guard apologizes for his rudeness and allows him to enter. Inside is a main hall filled with splendor. As expected, the castle of one of the 7 great demons is intimidating. The goblin doesn't look troubled at all, but considering his purpose for being there, he can't help but feel nervous inside. He turns around as he sees a butler bowing and thanking him for his patience. It was finally time for him to meet the ruler of the land. Considering how dangerous it is, he tells Tina not to come out. No matter what happens, she happily accepts, knowing she isn't a combatant. The young goblin walks past the large doors and into the darkness. Back at the front gates, the guard is unexpectedly approached by another hooded figure, who says they've come to hand something over to the student who has an audience with the king. The guard allows the stranger to pass without much worry. The throne room was enormous, perfect for a boss fight just like the ones that happen in the game. Pillars lit up while Lime walked forward and finally met face to face with his target. There, Dean smiled and welcomed him to the castle. The boy faced him countless times in the game, but the real thing has a different intensity. Bowing humbly, the goblin introduces himself to the king, who wants to confirm that he truly belongs to the lowest ranked tribe. With his affirmation, they talk about how he trained to reach such heights all on his own. Dean spends some time studying him with a hum. Seemingly satisfied that such a strong person exists, he moves on to grant the magical treasure for his victory in the tournament. There are 3 options: the Sword of Arknight, the Shield of Madness, and the Harness of Evil. Lime is surprised by the appearance of 3 legendary weapons, which is just what he needs. Dean points forward and tells Lime to take his pick. Relics appear before him, such as the Sword of Damnation called Arknight, the Shield of Madness, and the Chains of Hades. Lime is quietly impressed after seeing the rare equipment and thinks that he should not hold back. He chooses Arknight while Dean calmly acknowledges his decision. Dean extends the weapon and tells Lime to take it. He steps closer and places the sword into Lime's hand. As if it were nothing, Dean adds that the pillars leading up to his throne are made from this same power. He then explains that they were created using a special kind of jewel. Hearing this, Lime looks up in surprise and reacts in quiet confusion. Dean explains that the pillars serve as a test of loyalty for his vassals. He adds that anyone with hostile intentions will cause the jewels to glow red. In the next moment, red energy erupts as the jewels react and unleash their power. The force lashes out and slams into Lime. Gritting his teeth, Lime curses under his breath. Red energy surges forward as the attack closes in on Lime. Lime twists his body and narrowly escapes as the strike tears past him. Looking up in shock, Lime realizes the blow was meant to kill. Watching calmly, Dean remarks that Lime would have died if he hesitated and praises his great potential. Dean calmly says this is exactly why he wanted Lime in the dungeon. He raises his hand and orders his other vassals to come forward. Dark eyes open across the surroundings as pressure spreads, while his vassals gather without hesitation. Lime stands alone before the monsters as their presence presses in. He clicks his tongue quietly, then says it ends here. Dean scoffs and declares that even courage and forgiveness are meaningless. Lime straightens his posture, responding that Dean is wrong and admits that he can no longer hide the truth. Lime starts over and reintroduces himself. He declares that he has come to take Dean's head. He then declares that he will defeat Dean and claim the domain for himself. Dean asks if Lime is serious, and Lime calmly answers that he is. Lime adds that he could forgive Dean if he cries and begs for it. Enraged, Dean snarls and vows to kill Lime. Lime calmly says, "Now let the battle begin." Dean roars and commands his vassals to get him. Lime charges forward and asks Tina for first aid please. She replies that she can help, but cannot fully heal him. Lime understands her since the sword applies a heal block debuff. Lime thinks to himself that Dean is too strong and will need other players to fight him in a raid. The cruel king was supposed to be a lone boss, but Lime is confused to see minions crawling the room. Lime realizes that this is the difference from the game he knew. He uses his power to attack the monsters and notes that the difficulty keeps rising up. Purple energy detonates, and the shockwave tears the platform apart. Lime looks up as the collapsing platform falls away beneath him. A gargoyle dives down from above with its claws aimed straight at Lime. Lime twists midair and narrowly dodges as the gargoyle slashes past. The gargoyle smashes through the broken platform while Lime is flung clear. Lime steadies himself as several gargoyles close in at the same time. He drives his hand forward and activates dark worm magic. Shadowy strands wrap around the gargoyle. Lime then spins the bound gargoyles violently through the air. The gargoyles are thrown away as Lime shouts and takes control of the fight. The gargoyle crashes down, and the ground below splinters from the impact. Lime rushes forward and shouts, "Go!" as he throws himself into the fight. A powerful shockwave erupts as his attack surges ahead. Purple energy blasts streak across the platform toward the gargoyle. Another monster jerks back as the hits land squarely on its body. Purple energy surges violently as Lime's attack rips through the battlefield. Dean stares in shock and blurts out in disbelief. Lime gathers power in his hand and shouts for them to send in the next one. A massive explosion erupts violently as Lime's attack crashes into the ground. The impact sends them flying as cracks spread across its body. A monster tries to attack Lime from behind, but he counters it with an effortless strike. Lime spins in the air, while Dean sneers and calls him a fool. Lime reacts as he senses the sudden danger. Still in the air, he tries to evade another strike and shouts that it is an ambush. However, Lime fires a dark magic flare bomb at point-blank range. The blast forces him back as he stays suspended in the air, calmly observing the surroundings. Several gargoyles descend from above and chase him. Lime strikes down one attacker as others rush in. He lands firmly with his weapon prepared as the fight continues. Dean smiles and wonders how long Lime can keep running. Another monster suddenly dives in and aims straight at Lime, but he counters it with a swift horizontal slash. The strike cleaves through the monster in a single motion. Lime regains his stance and tries to catch his breath. Lime pauses, prompting Dean to laugh and says Lime still has a long way to go. Monsters tumble and scatter across the battlefield as the fight rages on. Lime smiles and agrees, saying his time might be up soon. Dean roars and orders Lime to die already. The monsters suddenly surge forward and rush straight at Lime. Lime speaks to himself and realizes he is about to reveal why he kept leaping from pillar to pillar. He then declares that his large-scale spell is complete and says it is time to get serious. A wave of magic expands around his feet and slams into the pillars nearby, forming a massive pentagram across the area. Lime uses dark magic and summons a goblin at level 300. He declares that he has moved beyond the path of light and into depths others cannot reach. Dark power pools around his hand as the summoning finishes. Lime commands the General Goblin King to appear. A summoning circle expands across the floor, and a glowing staff emerges as dense power gathers. The General Goblin King steps forward from the ritual with overwhelming presence. He looks around and comments that it has been ages since he last saw this world. Dean stares in disbelief and asks who Lime is supposed to be. He sneers and declares that Lime will be crushed no matter what he does. Dean then orders his forces to crush him without mercy. Lime smiles calmly and tells his general to show them his power. The Goblin King raises his staff and commands his loyal subjects to attack. Dean stares in disbelief. The monsters flinch as a blinding light floods the area. A goblin erupts from the ground without warning. More goblins follow as the summoning continues, shocking Dean as a full goblin army appears before him. Lime declares that when it comes to numbers, the goblins stand at the top. The Goblin King announces that between Dean's soldiers and his goblin army, the all-out war will begin. A monster lets out a fierce roar, crushing the goblin in front of it. Suddenly, the monster notices something. It is struck at close range, and the clash turns lethal. A storm of arrows rains down into the crowd as bodies begin dropping. Goblin archers draw their bows in formation and fire another volley, slamming into the front line, and a winged soldier is hit midair. The battlefield fills with fallen bodies as the all-out war spreads. The monster reels as arrows and weapons rain down on it from every direction. Unable to withstand the assault, it crashes to the ground as the battlefield trembles. Dean looks on in disbelief and mutters that this is impossible. Goblin soldiers move forward in formation with weapons ready. Watching them advance, the Goblin King calmly praises his compatriots for their efforts. The battlefield grows quiet as the summoned goblins vanish from sight, as well as the Goblin King. Lime steadies himself and readies for the next clash. Crimson streaks fall from the sky as the pressure thickens. Raising his hand, Lime signals that the second round is about to begin. Enraged, Dean curses Lime and makes sure he will not show him mercy. He then declares that he will kill Lime personally. Lime answers calmly and acknowledges that Dean has spirit at least. The cruel king roars as the force intensifies, and the area shakes. Lime notices the gravity change and being warped, prompting him to realize that holding back is no longer possible and begins powering up. Lime staggers as blood stains his body. Fairy warns that his injury cannot be completely healed. He knows that Dark Cure won't have any effect either because of the debuff, so he decides to finish the fight before his wound opens up. Their powers clash as they strike one another. Lime collides directly with Dean as their attacks meet. The impact drives Lime down through broken ground and debris. He charges back out of the rubble and rushes straight at him. Dean answers with a powerful counter as flames flare around his arm. He follows up immediately and continues pressing the attack. Lime's eyes widen as Dean unleashes a close-range attack. Flames erupt violently as the strike crashes down. Dean presses forward and forces the attack through the fire. The impact hits Lime and sends him flying backward. Without pause, Dean launches another attack aimed directly at him. A crimson blade flashes forward as Dean attacks again. Lime narrowly avoids the strike and lets out a sharp grunt. The blow tears into the ground behind him and sends debris flying. Lime steadies himself in a low stance across from Dean while showing his forearms. Fixing his gaze forward, Lime realizes that this fight is nothing like the game he once knew. Lime realizes that Dean would normally bind enemies with gravity before casting magic. A crimson grid expands across the battlefield and seals the area. Lime clenches his teeth and reacts as the pressure tightens. A massive explosion bursts outward as the spell detonates. Dean responds with a low laugh as the destruction settles. Dean pauses in surprise and fixes his gaze on Lime. The cruel king questions whether he is really a goblin after seeing him still standing. Lime reflects that no matter how strong his stats are, soloing a high-level boss is still difficult. Regaining his composure, Dean scoffs and says Lime still has the nerve to talk back. Dean whirls inside a raging red current as his power spikes. A massive red slash sweeps outward and races across the battlefield. Lime tracks the attack as it closes in fast. The blade of energy slams into the ground just behind him and sends debris flying. Dean immediately follows up and keeps the pressure on with another strike. Lime takes a look at the incoming strike and prepares to block the attack. The impact crashes into him at close range and forces out a strained reaction, making the blow drive him straight into the ground with tremendous force. Lime groans as he fights to withstand the pressure, but the attack sends him flying back. Lime tries to steady himself, but a red grid snaps into place again and imprisons him into the ground. He reacts in shock as he realizes he has been trapped. The blow rips through the area and detonates with overwhelming force. Lime pulls himself back up, breathing hard as he fights to remain upright. Dean mocks him and asks where the fighting spirit from earlier has gone. He warns Lime that the act will not fool him. Lime looks ahead and wonders what Dean is talking about. The cruel king accuses him of using underhanded tricks as a political counterattack, adding that even if Lime is close to death, they should fight without cheap tricks. Dean announces that he is about to use his ultimate technique. The ground shatters as pressure surges from below. Lime reacts immediately and realizes Dean is activating his signature skill. The cruel king's secret technique activates, calling it the Dance of the Antlion. Flames roar around Lime as the deadly technique bears down on him. Lime freezes for a moment and realizes that getting hit directly would be fatal. His eyes widen as he understands there is no room left to escape. Flames swirl like a cyclone, while Dean declares that everyone will perish by his flames. Lime recoils from the fiery flames, while thinking of a way to end the fight in a single strike. Hesitation suddenly pauses him at the look of his strength, making him curse under his breath. Fairy steps forward and offers to cast another healing spell, but Lime immediately stops her. Fairy pauses in shock until she is thrown back from an impact. Fairy manages to get a grip, but her struggles are evident. Dean declares that he will eradicate everyone without leaving any trace behind. Lime notes that there is no use at this point, hoping that he had more darkness in him to survive the situation. Suddenly, he pauses in shock after hearing a loud scream. Upon turning, he notices a cloaked person fall into the ground. She is revealed to be Letty, putting Lime in disbelief, but she tells him that there is no time to explain. Letty understands that Lime is struggling to have more darkness, prompting him to admit without hesitation, and hopes he gets to replenish it. Lime thinks that he might be able to defeat Dean in an instant strike. Letty then prepares to show him what evil elves like them are known for. However, she makes it clear that Lime will be on his own after that, as her move will render her useless. She closes her eyes, activating her secret technique. Light surrounds her as she calls upon evil devotion. Pausing Lime in disbelief, he realizes that she is using life drain magic to transfer dark energy to him. Letty begins to weaken, letting him know that the rest is up to him. Lime manages to catch Letty after she loses her consciousness, while he looks at her with concern. Suddenly, something catches his attention. His wounds start to heal instantly as he recalls that Letty is a princess of the elf tribe after all. Lime is impressed by the amount of darkness she created out of her life force. Meanwhile, Dean shouts for them to burn without leaving so much as a trace. His aura surrounds him, while Lime makes a promise for Letty and declares he will not waste her sacrifice. Lime notes that he does not need any skills, but he only needs to focus the darkness into a single point, then unleash it at once. He points his finger with confidence that he will defeat the cruel king. While Fairy screams in agony, Dean repeatedly screams obliteration as the fire devours the surroundings. Meanwhile, Lime calmly prepares his single blow as he points his aim, shooting a dark beam through the fire. Dean screams in shock, then an explosion follows in front of the cruel king. A hole appears after the strike, prompting Dean to drop dead on the ground. Lime calls the cruel king, admitting that he was stronger than in the game. Dean lies defeated, while Lime looks up with confidence and hope after winning the fight. Fairy is blown away by the impact until she notices that the situation has calmed down. Fairy drops to the ground, realizing that she is still alive. Without taking a break, Lime asks her to help Letty regain her life force fast. She instantly approaches them without hesitation. The healing begins while they acknowledge that Letty saved them after all. Lime looks at her with a smile, while notifications inform him of his achievements. He feels pleased after realizing that the attack he used turned into a signature skill, making it his original move. Lime is also excited after obtaining Arknight, which is a huge power-up in battle. However, he does not grow complacent, since he still needs to address running low on darkness during the fight. Suddenly, Letty finally wakes up, while Lime thanks her for saving them. Letty smiles in response, until she suddenly pauses. Letty turns red and gets caught by her emotions. She covers her face in embarrassment, until she runs away from Lime. Shortly after, she gathers herself and tells him that she is fine now. She stands up and thanks him, while questioning in her own mind why Lime always ends up carrying her like a princess. However, she recalls Lime tossing her aside last time, but he suddenly calls out to grab her attention. Lime asks her why she is here in the first place, but he stops himself and thanks her instead. Lime bows his head as he acknowledges that Letty helped him defeat Dean, even putting her life on the line. Confidently, Letty tells him that it is no big deal. She admits that she did not expect him to choose Dean, and expresses how amazing he is. Silently, Letty feels anxious as she realizes that she is falling for him. Fairy voices her confusion after Letty tells them that it is nothing. Lime returns to the topic and asks Letty what she is doing here, prompting her to turn serious. Letty reveals that they share the same goal, which is why she joined the academy. She explains that she seeks revenge against those who invaded her tribe's land. Lime pauses in shock, noting that he heard she was the imperial princess of the evil elf tribe. After a brief flashback, Letty asks if he knew she was royalty all along. She admits that she is a princess, but no longer has a country to call her own. She explains that her country still exists, but a different demon tribe has occupied it. She reveals that it has been turned into a land of slaves. Lime pauses again in shock, realizing this is another plotline he never knew about. Letty recalls the time when her father ruled their empire. They once offered their orichalcum refining techniques to the Demon Lord, in exchange for recognition as a neutral nation. However, the Demon Lord broke the contract, and invading forces attacked their kingdom. She reveals that one of the Demon Lord's 7 greats cast a dark curse on her father. Her father was placed into suspended animation, while the life force of his closest aides was absorbed. After that, the invaders ordered the citizens to become slaves. She recalls how deeply the people adored her father. After a brief pause, she explains that they had no choice but to submit and recite the magic incantation for refining orichalcum. Lime admits that he had no idea, but asks what she is doing here now. Letty explains that she sought help from neighboring countries, but none came to save them. That is why she decided that she would save her father and her country with her own hand. Meanwhile, a dark presence continues to rumble quietly behind her. Lime finally understands her motivation, while Letty shares that she was not expecting that he would defeat Dean. Meanwhile, the dark energy behind continues to loom and a skeletal hand crawls across the ground. Lime remains unaware of the situation, while Letty suddenly tells him that she finds him mysterious for a goblin. She wonders what other secrets he has been keeping, which catches him off guard. She lowers her head softly, confessing that she is going to go crazy for him. Lime suddenly remembers something, then asks Letty who took over her country. The dark energy continues to loom as she is about to reveal the name. Suddenly, the Phantom King Lich appears behind her with a sinister presence. Lime reacts in shock and tells Fairy and Letty to get behind him. Lime steps forward and prepares to face Lich, while Fairy hides behind him. Lich expresses disbelief that the cruel king has been slain. Suddenly, Letty confronts Lich and asks why he has appeared. Ignoring her, Lich questions Lime's power and refuses to believe it was caused by sudden mutation. Lime senses Lich's immense darkness and praises one of the 7 greats. Enraged, Letty prepares to strike and demands that Lich answer her question. Lime tells her to stop, but he is too late as her attacks strike Lich, but only pass through his body. Lich's sinister presence strengthens as he orders Letty to remain silent, then suddenly casts a spell. A massive magic circle appears beneath Letty and surrounds her with dark presence, catching her off guard. Suddenly, bright beams strike the dark strands, prompting Letty to stare in disbelief. Lime commands Lich to take his hands off Letty, as bright energy surrounds him. Lich is impressed by Lime's confidence, while Lime recognizes the patterns on the arcane circle. It turns out that it is the same spell as the corruption magic placed upon the hidden goblin village. Not only did Lich invade Letty's country, he is also the enemy of Lime's village. Meanwhile, Letty blushes after Lime saves her. Lich notes that the demon lord was right, prompting him to take interest in him. Lime shows confusion, while Lich declares that he will make him struggle first. Suddenly, Letty collapses to the ground, catching Lime off guard. A dark dagger pierces her chest as she struggles, until the arcane circle drags her away and Lime can only scream in disbelief. Lich remarks that Lime failed to notice the magic cast upon Letty. Lich's presence grows stronger and demands that Lime show him his choice. Lime pauses in confusion, until something suddenly catches his attention. He recognizes a vision spell before him, showing the hidden goblin village burning. Lich tells Lime to weigh the scales first, while villagers flee in panic as their home is consumed by flames. Enraged, Lime curses Lich, but the evil entity only stares back with a sinister presence. Lime tightens his grip on his sword, but Lich tells him not to rush. He reveals that he has not shown the other side of the scales. Letty lies on the ground inside the arcane circle, while she struggles tremendously. Lich warns Lime that Letty will not hold for long, just like the hidden village, revealing that she only has 30 minutes while imprisoned within the confines of her castle's peak, which stands exactly opposite from the goblin village. Lich turns to Lime and asks him which one he will save. He is curious to see which side of the scales weighs heavier for Lime, but Lime only lowers his head in silence. Lich adds that Lime's choice will prove useful to his analysis. Suddenly, Lime's powerful aura fills the surroundings, catching Lich off guard. He recognizes the darkness, while Lime remains calm. Lime finally reveals that he has chosen already, then cuts Lich clean, in one strike. Lich screams in pain, slowly vanishing into thin air. However, Lime realizes that it was only Lich's clone created using orichalcum, a technique he knows belongs to the evil elves. Looking at the crystal, Lime is certain that Lich still lives. Suddenly, someone calls Lime's attention. Fairy urgently asks which one Lime will save between Letty or Lime's sister. Lime calmly responds that he has already made his choice. Frustrated to know the answer, Fairy presses him for the answer. Lime steps forward as he announces his choice, confident that he can save the two of them. 1 hour earlier at the hidden village, Miyu declared that her task was done, while Lily excitedly checked it. Miyu showed the cake she baked, which Lily ended up liking. Lily noticed that the strawberries looked so sweet, and it was because of their clean well water. The two prepared to eat, enjoying the cake together. Suddenly, a loud scream stopped them from eating. As they turned with fear in their eyes, the two rushed to check the situation outside. Monsters ran amok in their burning village, terrorizing the villagers. Villagers ran in panic as monsters continued to appear. Lily and Miyu were in shock, and they saw the terrible sight. Miyu froze in fear, while Lily noted that it was just like what Lime said before. Lily recalled when Lime dispelled the contamination magic in the well, and told their elder that he could rest easy now. Lily was excited that they could finally make lots of delicious things. However, Lime told them that it was not completely over yet. Lime approached Lily, reminding her that the one who cast the spell could one day show their face. When that happened, Lily and Miyu remembered to use the secret corridor to escape with everyone. Monsters continued to massacre the villagers without hesitation, while Lily told everyone to follow her. A portal opened, and the villagers quickly escaped. A monster stopped them from escaping, while Lily held her breath as she anticipated that the monsters would follow them. Lily told Miyu to move out of the way, then she stepped forward and smashed the portal with a massive hammer. The portal malfunctioned, while Lily explained that she had no other choice but to break it. Miyu understood her, telling her that Lime would have done the same thing. Suddenly, the two turned their heads, while the monster approached them with a sinister presence. Lily called out for her brother, as she froze in fear. Back at Dean's castle, Lime vows to use all the dark magic skills he has acquired to save Letty and Lily. He calls Fairy, and she instantly responds. The two quickly discuss their plan, then Fairy confirms that she understands it. Lime tells her that failure is not an option, and that he is counting on her. He activates his system, and notes that they will start with his sister. Lime teleports into the hidden village, and instantly activates a wave of darkness. He releases it like water onto the ground, causing a ripple effect across the area. Lime senses the entire village until he recognizes his sister's aura. He bursts out of the ground immediately, rushing through the monsters to reach her. Meanwhile, a monster mocks Lily and says she can be useful for Lich's experiments. Lily grips her hammer and tells Miyu to stand behind her. Miyu hesitates, but Lily tells her to listen. The monster says resistance is futile, then suddenly casts a dark spell. Lily recoils in fear as her hammer begins to melt. The monster approaches Lily and attempts to take her soul, while Lime charges through the village toward his sister. Lime slashes every monster in his path. Desperate to reach Lily in time, a portal forms above Lily's head as she freezes in fear. She screams for her brother until Miyu suddenly steps in front of her. Lily freezes in shock as she sees Miyu fall to the ground. Lily tries to wake her, but Miyu does not respond. The monster mocks them, while Miyu slowly opens her eyes. Miyu thanks Lily for freeing a slave like her. She shares that when she came to the village and spent time with Lily, she had so much fun, and urges Lily to escape. The monster grows irritated by the scene and prepares to kill Lily next. Lily grits her teeth and tells the monster that she will not lose to him. The monster reacts in anger, then declares that it is Lily's turn to die. Suddenly, the monster's face splits apart, revealing that Lime arrived just in time and cut him down. Lime grits his teeth as Lily feels relief upon seeing her brother. Lime apologizes for being late. While Miyu clings to life, Lime promises to handle everything. He suddenly summons a goblin. Lime recites an incantation and calls forth the goblin priestess. The priestess appears instantly and realizes that Lime must be in trouble if he summoned her. Lime asks her to heal Miyu, and the priestess quickly understands the severity of the wounds. The priestess explains that Miyu must be taken to an isolated space to fully recover. Lime agrees without hesitation, trusting the priestess. She closes her eyes, while Lime banishes them into the isolated space. Lily lets out a breath of relief, while Lime looks at her with a gentle smile. Suddenly, Lily notices something and realizes that her brother still needs to save someone else. Lily pauses for a moment, and then she calls her big brother. Lime is confused after she thanks him for saving her. Lily sees through him and realizes that Lime needs to be somewhere else, prompting him to react in shock. Lily smiles and proudly reminds him that she is his little sister. She holds his hand, trying to confirm if there is still someone he needs to save. Lime's expression hardens as he thinks about Letty. Inside Lich's castle, Letty lies on the ground in the confinement chamber. The dagger remains pierced in her chest, until she finally wakes up and asks where she is. Letty tries to stand up, but the dagger suddenly reacts. Letty collapses to the ground, until dark energy pours out and reveals Lich's form. Lich pauses for a moment, while Letty asks if she is going to die in the chamber. She begs him and calls out for Lime to save her. Back in the hidden village, Lime confirms that Lily's assumption is correct. Lily tells her brother to leave and reassures him that she will be fine. Lime worries about the monsters still roaming the village, but Lily asks him to lend her his friend instead. Lime is shocked by her request, while Lily tells him that she does not need to be protected all the time. She reassures her brother to leave the situation to her, leaving Lime speechless. Lime lowers his head, allowing his sister to decide for herself. He tells her that the rest is up to her. Lime stands still for a moment, then he uses his power to summon his army of goblins. Reciting the incantation, he calls forth the heroic spirits of the goblin tribe. The army instantly responds, while Lime asks them to protect the village even if it is only for a limited time. A goblin soldier notes that their bodies lie in the village, so they will uphold their vows. Lime turns to Lily and tells her that he needs to save Letty now. Lily expresses her support, giving him words of encouragement. She looks ahead, noting that he has always been by her side. Lime suddenly makes another request to the goblins, then he dashes forward. Frustrated, Lime silently notes that he cannot use fast travel to reach where Letty is being held captive, so he decides to go there manually. Lime suddenly summons dark magic, calling forth a goblin strongarm. He orders the goblin to throw him as hard as it can, which the strongarm obeys without hesitation. The goblin plants its feet on the ground, gritting its teeth as it gathers strength, then launches Lime into the air like a cannon. Lime uses his magic again mid-air, summoning a gob dragon. Gritting his teeth, Lime promises to save Letty. He kicks the dragon, prompting it to surge forward. Lich looms over Letty, while she fears that she is going to die soon. Lich responds that he will not kill her just yet. However, he is bothered by Lime after killing his clone in an instant. Lich notes afterwards that his analysis is proceeding smoothly. Meanwhile, he opens an arcane circle to project what is happening in the hidden village. To Lich's surprise, he sees that his underlings have all been annihilated. He cannot believe how Lime managed to reach the hidden village so fast from Dean's castle, until he realizes that Lime's next destination is his own domain. Looking at Letty, Lich decides that his next move is to kill her. He plans to bring her back from the realm of the dead and force Lime to fight her. Meanwhile, Lime rides on the dragon's back, asking the beast to fly faster. However, the dragon responds that it is already doing everything it can. Lime curses under his breath, trying to hurry as he remembers the promise he made to save Letty. Back in Lich's castle, he declares that his plans have changed and Letty will die now. Letty looks up weakly, her strength nearly gone. Lich raises his scythe, but Letty can only cry helplessly. Desperate, Lime can only urge the beast to fly faster. Lich tells Letty that her sense of pain will fade once she becomes a spirit. Letty closes her eyes and hopes that Lime will come for her. However, Lich believes that Lime will not arrive in time. Lich raises his scythe and commands Letty to become one of his servants. Lime closes his eyes, while Letty waits for her death. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupts, widening both Letty's and Lich's eyes in shock. A shining knight appears out of nowhere and blocks Lich's strike. As the knight slashes back, Lich loses his balance. Shaking as he grips his scythe, Lich questions who interrupted his attack. The Dark Knight steps forward, introducing himself as Lute, revealing that he is Lime's friend. He addresses Lich with confidence and declares that he will take his life. 10 minutes earlier, Lime told Tina that they were going to fast travel to the dorm before heading to the village. He asked her to stay there and tell a certain someone something for him. The message is, "Please become my ally." Once she says this, he should understand the rest. Lastly, he asks her to hand him the sword of Arknight without fail. Responding to his call, the Dark Knight now stood against the Phantom King Lich, vowing to take his life right then and there. Before the ruler could respond, the ceiling blast opened. He's surprised to see Lime descending from the sky and coming to Letty's rescue. She's overjoyed that he's there, and his friend is slightly disappointed that he managed to come so fast. After all, Lute was going to take the Lich down for him. To quell his dismay, the two agree to fight side by side instead. Their impudent and mocking words enrage the great demon, but their sentiments carry far greater intention than mocking. He enslaved the evil elves, placed a curse on their princess, Letty, and messed with the hidden village of goblins. Their land was corrupted, his sister and friend were attacked, and several villagers were killed. Such an atrocious being has no shred of dignity to be preserved. Lich silences the inferior races, now determined to kill every last one of them. Casting his ultimate technique, he raises the dead to fight in his stead. While Letty shrieks from the savage spell, the two fighters take their blades, unleash all of their darkness, and match their breathing with each other. Together, their power explodes as they pillow through the dozens of undead enemies in front of them. It's an amazing display to say the least, especially as their moves seamlessly decimated the enemy forces. Even the Lich was surprised by how easily his summons were being taken down. In fact, Lute was already on the ground in front of him. Lime appeared behind him almost immediately after, and now he was surrounded with nowhere to go. They swing their blades to slice the great demon into pieces. It seems like they've won when he falls, but instead of a body, they're surprised to find a broken gem on the floor. It was a fake, and the real body was nowhere to be found. A voice from the shadows tells the foolish challengers that they only fought a clone. His other ability is to conceal himself in a hidden space and attack from there. Now, they were going to die without even perceiving his presence. However, Lime was missing just as he was. The signature skill of the Lick, Dimension of Nothingness, can be cast at random and is impossible to predict, but one can defeat this by casting the highest level detection magic beforehand. The Goblin is well aware of every single attack pattern he has. The Lich trembled in disbelief. It's a relief that all of Lime's old strategies still work against the Lich. Even if history changes, he'll still be a trash boss no matter what. The great demon realized that he had lost and began begging for his life. For all the villagers he's killed, and for all the evil elves he's wronged, the Goblin Messiah will deliver his punishment. There's nothing he can do when Lime slashes through his body. His concealed space is broken and he's revealed to the world. While he falls here, his analysis of the young upstart has been completed. He's a being that was summoned from another world by the goddess of goblins. The exposure takes him by surprise, and the Lich says he isn't a demon at all. Rather, he is an abomination, more so than the hero's forces. All of the analysis has been transferred to the great demon king, Hermes. Lute joyfully ran to his comrade, but is surprised as to why he had such a quiet and serious expression. Lime knew that the demon lord would know eventually, but things are going to get harder earlier than he anticipated. He goes ahead and treats Letty's injuries for now. Fortunately, she opens her eyes as soon as he dispels the curse left by the demon. Propping herself up, the elf's surroundings confuse her, as her mind is still muddled by the spell. She's relieved to see her friend, saying it'll be alright and asking her to rest a bit longer. Her gaze warms when she realizes that he saved her once more. It might not seem like it, but she was the most accomplished knight in her homeland. but ever since meeting him, she became a person who always needs to be saved. This makes Lime come close and say that the same goes for him as well. They're friends after all. Blushing from his affection, she laughs it off and says she's really glad to be his friend. The young elf stands up to leave out of embarrassment, but like he said, she's still too weak and ends up falling back into his arms. This doesn't help her feelings, and she turns even redder than before. Their locked gaze pulls on her feelings, and it seems like she's about to say something. A confession starts to make its way out of her mouth. Lime also blushes as if understanding, while her mind and heart start to get tangled up. Just then, Lute's awkward cough cuts through the moment. He apologizes for interrupting their fun, and asks to be introduced to the girl he just saved. This makes the two jump away from each other and apologize. The kobold and Tina rant about how the goblin always seems to get the glory. Letty questions when she became such a delusional character. Moving on, Lime suggests holding a celebration party to get everyone acquainted. He wants to introduce Lute to Lily as well, and he wants them to meet his reliable comrade. The kobold brightens up upon hearing this, and with all that settled, they head back to the village together. In the hidden village of the goblins, everyone was busy cleaning the wreckage caused by the lich's attack. While some recovered, some mourned their losses. The healer goblin worked hard to help Miyu get better, and she finally opened her eyes after some time. Lily is overjoyed to see her wake up, albeit with her mind still in a daze. The priestess looked at her tenderly. Her consciousness has healed, and the rest of her wounds should be okay with time. Seeing them cry out of relief, the great ancestor sees herself out after completing her task. Miyu was still surprised that she was actually alive. A gentle smile spreads on her face when she hears that Lime saved her again. This is all he's been doing, ever since they first met. Just then, they hear a couple knocks on the door, and open it to find the girl's savior. Lily hugs her big brother and welcomes him back. She heard that there was going to be a big celebration, so she whipped up a bunch of food. The group of friends gasp at the sight of the glistening spread of food. Eager to get the party started, they take a seat by the bountiful table. Lute stands up and nervously introduces himself to everyone, sharing that he's been friends with Lime for a while now. Lily greets and thanks him for taking care of her big brother. The scene oddly felt like someone meeting their partner's parents. Moving on, Letty excitedly raises her hand. She's hesitant when it's time to label their relationship, but she just calls herself Lime's friend. Miyu introduces herself as someone the goblin saved, and Lily as his little sister, who's glad to see that he's made a lot of friends along the way. The elf breathes a sigh of relief, remembering how she questioned their relationship when she first saw the three together. Bowing, the young girl asks them to keep taking care of her brother. As it's a bit awkward, Lime suggests a toast, so they all raise and clink their glasses together. They move on and talk about the escalating oppression by the demon army, which is why he needs an audience with the demon lord. Once he does something, he calls to Letty and says he wants her to help liberate her home, the evil elf empire. The unexpected statement takes her by surprise, but now that Lich is gone, doing so should be much easier. With Lute promising to provide his assistance as well, she can't help but be filled with gratitude. Lily is asked to stay in the village a while longer, and she's more than happy to let them do whatever it is they need to. The atmosphere was perfect and joyful for now. After liberating the elves, they'll finally be at the crux. In the Demon Lord's castle, the Lich's analysis of Lime played clearly. With observant and interested eyes, Hermes studied the visitor from another world. The group soon reaches the borders of the evil elf empire. Looking over it, Lime sees a couple of guards guarding the gate, and a lot of oppression happening within the walls of the kingdom. Guards were engaging in slavery, and even taking food from vendors. This is exactly how it was when Letty first left her home. She quietly tells them to wait, as she'll free them all. Enemy infrastructure must be in chaos, with the Lich's absence. Still, slipping through the gate undetected would be impossible. Lute turns to the princess, thinking that she must know of a secret entrance. Unfortunately, such a convenient shortcut doesn't exist in the Empire, and they'll have no choice but to go in through the front. Lime asks Letty to bear with his plan for a few minutes. Later on, they arrive by the gate, and the guards perk up at the sight of an unfamiliar set of people. Ordered to identify themselves, Tina says she's come to return an evil elf who fled from the kingdom. A robed elf is tugged forward, but even with her covers, they recognize her as the missing princess of the Empire. After hearing that she's a rebel, the fairy took it upon herself to find her, and is expecting a generous reward for catching her alive and unharmed. While it's a greedy goal, the guards let her pass and give her directions to the palace. With this, they successfully infiltrate the walls without a hitch. Lime apologizes for making Letty take on such a role, but she knows that it was their best bet of getting in without harm. Still, she's surprised that he even managed to come up with such a plan. While they go on about his weirdness, Lute asks for their next move. They now have to make contact with the Elvish resistance. While walking through the streets, they see lines of elves, chained up and pulled by soldiers. Apparently, elves proficient in magic are taken to the mines behind the castle. They're forced to cast magic that refines the orichalcum ores, day and night without rest. It's a cruel life, and is similar to the persecution of the goblin race. Lime remains silent until they reach their destination. Pressing her hand on a wall, Letty utters an incantation. A stone above lights up and a path opens up. She walks forward and leads the group into the underground base. They find themselves in front of a door, which she confidently pushes open. Inside, an old elf named Elrond stands up from surprise. He breathes a sigh of relief, unable to believe that the princess is safe. After happily returning his greetings, she corrects him, saying she's a knight, not a princess. He asks if her return means that she actually beat Duel. Confirming the cruel king's defeat, she requests that everyone be gathered. Soon enough, the resistance members are all present. They're shown the sword of Arknight as proof of their victory, and Letty then explains that it's Lime who's responsible for the achievement. Elrond is naturally skeptical because of his race, so she loudly scolds him and says he's the one who saved her life. This makes the old man apologize with a deep bow. Regaining his composure, he notes that the curse-breaking sword should allow them to save the emperor who's imprisoned within the castle. It was time to raise the flag of rebellion. The one who cursed her father was Ren, the commander-in-chief of the occupying forces. He has the same class as Lime, and is known as the strongest mage in the demon continent, even surpassing the Seven. Regardless, all he has to do is take him down and tidy things up. The elves consider Ren a traitor to his kind and his home. Lime mentions that they just have to beat him. Now that the Lich is gone, Elrond doubts his ears and asks him to repeat himself, so the goblin shocks everyone by announcing that he did, in fact, defeat the king, even sharing that Lute helped him do it. As Letty proudly reiterated how he's no ordinary goblin, the resistance cheered with newfound hope and trust in the young hero. Now, they were ready to show the enemy what they're made of. Calling Lime with a sincere heart, the princess asks if he can become the nation's messiah. There's no question, since it's the reason he came there in the first place. He asks to know a bit more about the empire, to form a proper strategy. As such, they spend some time talking about various things and finalizing a realistic plan of attack. Elrond is skeptical of the feasibility, but is told that nothing is impossible with Lime. Letty is even more confident than the goblin. Still, her trust and endorsement allows the other elves to feel the same way about him. Their race values strength above all, and follows the strong no matter what. In other words, the goblin is the one in charge. With the weight of their lives on his shoulders, he asks for a map of the castle. With Elrond preparing weapons and medical supplies as well, they should be ready to move out at dawn 2 days from now. The outsiders turn in for the night, but Tina's job still wasn't done, as she still had to map out the entire area. Lute notes that there's never a dull moment when he's with his friend. Little did he expect that there was such a troublemaker in the Dark Academy. He's called out for being just as much of an upstart as he is. After all, he opposed the Demon King's army and became their ally in a heartbeat. The kobold already knew that the army was persecuting the low-ranking monsters. His race is also a victim. While they don't know what'll happen in the future, he's decided to follow him no matter what. This is as expected of the Great Dark Knight. The two part ways for now. In terms of strength, Lime can't help but expect great things from Lute. Lying on his bed later on, the goblin is surprised by approaching footsteps. Letty has come to visit his room in the dead of night and, with a nervous expression, asks to talk for a little bit. They sit on his bed in silence for a while. He's conscious of the fact that he's alone in his bedroom with a girl so late at night. The young man flinches when she calls his name, saying there's something she must tell him before the operation. Ren is an evil elf like her, and was exceptional enough of a mage to create his own type of magic. With his talent and ambition, he got fed up with the Empire's low level of research. He left and returned as the commander of the Demon Lord's occupying army. This is the reason why they consider him a traitor of his race. Now, he's trying to take over rulership using the might of the military. Lime remembers that Ren was already the next emperor candidate. Putting the puzzle pieces together, he finally realizes that the traitor is also Letty's fiancé. If he takes control of the Empire now, she'd be forced to marry him, who killed his own people. This is why she had to run away from her own homeland. As silence fills the room and tears well up in her eyes, Lime surprises her by reaching out and taking her hand. Lime holds Letty's hand, promising that he will not allow Ren to marry her. His face hardens as he tells her that he will protect her. Silently, Lime notes that protecting Letty is the fastest way to free their nation from the Demon Lord's army. Letty is touched by his words, prompting her to hug him. She thanks him and explains that she always had to stay strong, since she is a knight. She recalls the time when she was often plagued by doubt. Lime reassures her and tells her that she did a great job. Suddenly, Letty grabs his arm, and he pauses as he waits for her to speak. Tears fall from her eyes and she brings up the idea of calling off her engagement with Ren. Her face blushes as she hesitates to continue, but Fairy suddenly interrupts the moment. Fairy appears with a mischievous grin as she explains that she had to work late into the night. Lime and Letty panic after Fairy calls them out for flirting. Fairy teases them and points out that they sound like love birds, prompting Letty to deny it. Fairy dismisses her and goes to sleep instead, reminding them to save the flirting until the operation succeeds. Lime and Letty pause in an awkward silence. At Loelf Castle, Ren watches through his crystal ball. He sees Fairy infiltrating the premises and mentions the suspicious slave merchant. Although it appears that Letty was captured, Ren believes that they have been invaded. He steps forward and expects that the resistance will make their move at any moment. Ren vows to crush all of them so he can become the emperor of the evil elf empire, and so Letty can finally be his. The next day, in the garden, something catches Letty's attention. Lute brings an item to Lime, wondering what he plans to do with the tattered clothes. Lime responds that they will use it for the operation. After defeating Lich, Lime unlocked a unique skill called Dark Synthesis. He picks up flowers, then places them onto the tattered clothes. Lime closes his eyes, activating his skill as dark energy gathers around him. A beautiful dress suddenly appears, astonishing Letty. Lute also finds the transformation impressive. Lime explains that infusing dark magic makes the dress durable and able to withstand a small blast. He adds that he will make more, allowing Lute to realize his plan. Lime confirms that Lute is correct, revealing that they will attend the masquerade ball where Ren will be present. They plan to infiltrate the event, defeat Ren, and force him to reveal where Letty's father is being held. The next evening, the group dresses in elegant outfits. Lime says that it is time, preparing to begin the battle. His face is filled with confidence. The group gathers at the foyer, while Letty notes that Elron and the others are on standby and will move once they determine her father's location. Lime understands the plan and prepares to begin. The event begins in the ballroom, where guests exchange pleasantries. The group blends in, while they search for Ren within the crowd. Letty confirms that Ren should be nearby, but finding him will not be easy due to the many masked guests. A lady suddenly approaches Lime, while a gentleman remarks that he does not look like a distinguished soldier of the Demon Lord's army. Lime presents his invitation as proof, but the lady expresses doubt since low-ranking soldiers have tried sneaking in with fake invitations before. She suddenly tests him, so she can determine whether they truly belong at the masquerade ball. The lady insults them in ancient Elvish language, something Letty recognizes but struggles to understand. Lime signals that he has the situation under control, stating that they deserve a proper response befitting such rude accusation. Silently, Lime plans to drive them away quietly, without causing a scene. Lime adjusts his mask, while the lady attempts to repeat her words in modern Elvish so he can understand. However, Lime replies in ancient Elvish and remarks that he understood every insult she spoke earlier. The lady is caught off guard, while Lime states that he is more proficient in ancient Elvish than she is and other dialects in the region. Lime identifies where she comes from and calls her conceited, leaving her speechless and embarrassed. He adds that a noble's worth is not decided by birthright, but by conduct. He steps closer and tells her to get out of his sight. She recoils in shame, and the gentleman calls Lime insolent as he reaches for his sword, but someone suddenly stops him. Lute releases his aura and warns the gentleman not to cause a scene, causing him to freeze in fear. The two nobles retreat and warn that they will not let this pass. Letty immediately asks Lime how he knows ancient Elvish. Lime smiles and replies that he may have cheated a little. Lime reveals that he secretly summoned a goblin scholar, whispering the incantation so its knowledge could be implanted into his mind. Letty reacts in shock and thinks that it was more than just cheating, until something else catches her attention. Other ladies stand nearby in awe, revealing that they were listening to Lime the entire time. One lady asks him not to judge the spirit of the ball based on those two nobles. Another adds that the nobles have always been arrogant despite their status, making them disliked by others. The way Lime handled the situation earns the admiration of the surrounding nobles. Lime suddenly feels embarrassed, until someone asks for his name. He shyly introduces himself, and Lute follows. The noblewomen gush and invite the two to dance. Letty finds the sudden turn of events irritating, while Fairy teases her and asks what she plans to do next. Suddenly, a refined set of footsteps echoes through the hall, revealing Ren's arrival. Letty's eyes widen as she sees the man responsible for her father's disappearance. She freezes in fear, while Lime remains alert now that their target has appeared. Letty notices the refined orichalcum items that were created at the cost of everyone's hard labor. She despises the fact that only military officials and a few privileged elves receive the benefits. Suddenly, Ren declares that the dance party is about to begin, but he adds that this is what they truly wanted to announce. Lime stays alert, while Ren tells everyone that he will first eliminate the unwanted guests at his party. He releases his aura and thanks everyone for attending. The guests expressed their gratitude for hosting the event, claiming that the Empire would not survive without him. Ren snaps his fingers to reveal what they have all been waiting for. The curtains open, shocking the nobles inside the hall. Various artifacts are revealed, all crafted from the finest orichalcum. Ren explains that he plans to sell these artifacts to the Demon Lord's army to earn profit. He claims that the profits will be shared with the citizens of the Empire. He mentions that they have lost contact with Lich, and that some have spotted Letty in the royal capital. He adds that last night, a rebel spy was seen flying above the capital. Lime and Lute realize that Ren has already seen through their assassination plan. Ren announces that rebels are hiding among them. He activates his all-seeing eye, pointing directly at Lime within the crowd. Lime meets his gaze without fear, while guards immediately surround him. Lime gathers his dark magic, while Ren claims that he does not wish to use force. Ren proposes that they settle this with a soul-sworn duel instead, drawing Letty's attention. Lime questions the proposal, while Letty explains that the loser must obey any demand made by the victor. She adds that the power of the pledge between the duelist's souls is absolute. Letty suggests that they should refuse the duel, but Ren notes that she is far too familiar with elven customs for a rebel. He exposes her identity despite the mask, leaving her in shock. Ren forces Lime to accept the duel or he will harm the rebels hiding within the castle, freezing Letty in fear as she thinks about Elrond. Ren wagers that if he wins, Lime must reveal the secret behind his dark magic. Lime realizes that Ren learned his identity from Lich before his death, while Ren adds that he will marry Letty and become the nation's emperor. Without hesitation, Lime accepts the duel. He removes his mask and tells Letty that he will protect her, then formally accepts the challenge. Everyone soon gathers at the royal arena, where Lime and Ren face each other for the soul-sworn duel. The crowd cheers, but Letty and the others look tense. The nobles are confident that Ren will defeat the challenger, while Lime notices Ren's orichalcum rod. Lime recognizes that the rod can greatly amplify magical conductivity. By wielding it, Ren's magical power will increase several times over. Silently, Lime thinks that he may need to fight dirty against an unknown opponent and fellow dark mage. The duel begins, and Lime immediately uses a flare bomb. Ren calls him naive and counters with a dark veil. Lime is silently impressed that Ren can cast magic exceeding level 50. Lime searches for a way to gain the upper hand, but Ren follows up with a massive supernova. Lime is shocked by how quickly Ren completes the chant. Then a massive explosion erupts and engulfs the royal arena. Panic takes over Letty and Lute as they worry for Lime. Trying to regain his balance, Lime admits that Ren's dark magic potency is stronger than his. Ren summons an abyss hole and taunts Lime. His rod lights up, and green energy swirls around Lime. An impact suddenly slams into the ground, while Lime finds it strange that he can barely sense the manipulation of darkness. Ren tells him to endure another attack as he activates death pressure. Lime feels the gravity within his body, crushing him into the ground with massive force. Lime voices his confusion as he realizes he cannot control his inner darkness. Without hesitation, Ren summons falling acid, showering down on Lime as he fails to dodge the next strike. Letty screams for Lime, while he tries to counter the acid using his veil. Lime struggles to stand, but Ren follows up by casting Hellblaze. Lime narrowly dodges the attack, frustrating him as his opponent's cast times are far too fast. Ren mocks him, but Lime confidently replies that he is only getting started. Ren mocks him again for failing to land a single hit, but Lime calls him impatient. Ren smiles and describes him as impudent, while Lime admits that he cannot find a way out of his situation. Ren raises his rod and attempts to end the duel as he strikes again, but Lime suddenly notices something as his gaze shifts toward the statue. Ren casts Blizzard and Flare Bomb simultaneously, shocking Lime. Ren arrogantly states that combining the two spells creates level 100 dark magic. Lime freezes in fear, unable to move as his eyes widen. Suddenly, Lime finds himself floating within a familiar realm. He pauses in shock, seeing the goddess of goblins, telling him that he overestimated himself. Lime realizes that he has returned to the realm he once visited. The goddess reminds him that she did not reincarnate him just to fall at a moment like this. She warns him that this is his last chance and urges him to defeat Ren. Lime lowers his head and explains that his inner darkness was being deflected, but he believes the statue in the arena has something to do with it. The goddess realizes that Lime has finally understood the situation, and Lime agrees with her. Lime concludes that the artifact is responsible for Ren's rapid casting and ability to activate two spells at once. The goddess praises his growth, but Lime questions her true intent. The goddess calls him foolish, but decides to grant him one more chance. She explains that she can appear before him again because faith in her is returning to the world. She thanks him and asks him to keep up the good work, leaving Lime speechless. She stops speaking and steps forward, instructing him to fulfill his role as a messiah. Lime returns to the royal arena with shock still on his face, as a massive explosion engulfs the area. Lime extends his hand, and rejects the notion that he is a messiah. He attempts to deflect Ren's power, causing Ren to react in shock. Lime grins with confidence as he taps into his newly awakened power, determined to stop Ren's quick incantations and dual casting. Lime pushes through. Ren points his staff, and thinks that he has already cornered Lime. He freezes in shock. Then another massive explosion erupts in the royal arena. Lime crashes to the ground, while Ren grins as he watches him suffer. Panic takes over Letty and Lute in the audience, urging Lime to concede, but he refuses. Lime turns to Lute, whispering an important order. Lute pauses after hearing him, then Lime launches himself forward in a flash. To disrupt Ren's fast chanting, Lime closes the distance and creates chaos in the arena. Ren hesitates as dark smoke spreads around him, searching for Lime. Suddenly, Lime appears behind him. Lime's expression hardens as he strikes, but Ren blocks the attack. Ren's confidence shows as he reveals that his rod functions as a top-class weapon. Lime admits that his opponent is also physically fast. Ren mocks him as he delivers another strike, sending Lime flying from the impact. Lime crashes into the ground, while Ren prepares to pierce him with his rod. Lime's eye brightens as he attempts to block the attack, but Ren tells him that it is useless. Ren finishes him without hesitation, forcing Lime to collapse completely. The referee checks for signs of life and declares him defeated, while Ren grins, believing he has won. The referee announces Ren's victory, and he turns to the crowd with pride. Suddenly, something catches Ren's attention. The crowd points forward in fear, prompting Ren to turn. Bleeding heavily, Lime slowly rises from the ground. Shock fills Ren's eyes as he cannot believe Lime is still alive. Lime slowly raises his arm, but Ren moves to strike without hesitation. Suddenly, lifeless elves appear behind Ren, throwing him into panic as he cannot understand what is happening. Lime explains that he summoned the elves Ren mistreated and left to die as slaves. Ren begs for mercy, while Lime drags him down to hell with him. Terror fills Ren's face as he screams, then collapses to the ground in confusion. Ren convinces himself that it was only an illusion, while Lime asks if he enjoyed his dream of victory as he activates his evil eye. Ren realizes when Lime activates his skill, then notices that his artifact is gone. Lute calls out to Lime, telling him that they are ready as he stands beside the statue. Letty and Fairy signal that they are ready as well, while Ren freezes in disbelief. Lime confronts him, and explains that his quick incantations and dual casting were never his true abilities. He reveals that the statues in the arena and the brooch were enabling the spells instead. Lime shatters the brooch, and tells Ren that he can no longer rely on those tricks, while Lute confirms that the statues have already been sealed. Ren panics as Lime realizes that the statues were also disrupting his own balance. Lime's aura erupts around him, warning Ren that it is finally his turn. Ren tries to stop him and surrenders, but Lime continues his punch. The impact hits Ren, causing him to nearly lose consciousness. Lime pins his foot to the ground, then delivers a powerful kick to Ren's stomach. Ren coughs blood from the impact, then Lime gathers his dark energy in his hand. Lime's expression hardens, before he strikes Ren's face without hesitation. A massive explosion erupts from the impact, sending Ren crashing into the wall. Finally, the referee declares Lime as the winner. Lime calls for Letty, and she immediately approaches Ren. Letty orders him to reveal where her father is in the name of the Soulsworn duel. Ren reveals that her father is hidden in the underground waterway, prompting Letty to move quickly. Suddenly, the guards stop her and remind her that elves are not allowed to act on their own. Letty pauses, until a sudden strike hits the guard from out of nowhere. Additional attacks strike the others, as reinforcements declare that they will handle the rest. Elrond and the others arrive, while Letty runs ahead and thanks him. She reminds him that she is still a knight, while Elrond smiles as if he believes her without doubt. Lime notes that it is time to conclude their counterattack, then he takes to the air. Lime draws the attention of the army and the elves, announcing Lich's death and Ren's defeat. He adds that the occupying army has no chance of victory because of the elvish resistance. Lime urges the citizens to free their brethren who were forced to cast spells for the enemy. The crowd cheers as they are finally liberated, while Lime descends and walks across the arena. Meanwhile, Lute calls out to Lime, telling him to leave the rest to him so he can follow Letty. Lime agrees, while Letty reaches the secret chamber. Letty casts an incantation to unlock the door, and it opens instantly. Her eyes widen, then she rushes inside without hesitation. Her father lies chained and asleep under a powerful spell, but this is nothing for her. Letty cries out in pain as she grabs the chains, until someone arrives to help her. Lime summons the Sword of Damnation, calmly slashing forward and breaking the chains. Letty's father finally awakens, and she immediately embraces him as they reunite. Lime smiles as he watches them, and peace finally settles over the evil elf empire. Elrond and the rebels drive the occupying army away, freeing the enslaved elves at last. Just like in the Hidden Village, the elves become a liberated nation freed from the Demon Lord's grasp. Lime prepares for his next move, and that is to raid the headquarters of the Demon Lord's army. Peace is restored across the Elf Empire as the Emperor addresses Lime, praising him for saving their nation. Lime humbly replies that the victory belonged to everyone, recognizing Letty and Lute for lending their strength. The Emperor lowers his head and tells him there is no need for such humility, but Lime explains that he never meant it that way. Elrond then thanks him as well, though his tone darkens as he admits his disappointment in Ren for nearly taking Letty away. He turns to the Emperor and asks whether Letty may be allowed to marry Lime. After realizing there are no records of interspecies couples, the Emperor smiles, imagining what their children might look like. Letty and Lime blush, and when the Emperor asks if she objects, Elrond smiles and offers his congratulations. Letty cannot hide her reaction, but Lime suddenly draws everyone's attention to himself. He explains that while he appreciates the offer, a wedding is not what they should be focusing on. When the Emperor asks why, Lime reveals that the Demon Lord is likely monitoring him and that an attack will come soon. He proposes an airtight defense to protect the Empire, followed by a direct strike on the enemy's headquarters. Elrond and the Emperor are clearly surprised, while Fairy and Lute smile, already expecting such resolve from him. Letty looks frightened for Lime's safety, but he reassures them that only a select few will take part in the infiltration. After pondering the plan, the Emperor turns to Elrond, and soon all orichalcum artifacts are brought out. He allows Lime to use all of them, leaving him visibly stunned. Reassuring him of their full support, the Emperor prays for his success and calls him the Messiah of their nation, inviting him to a banquet before his departure. Lime and Lute stay in the ballroom until a gentle footstep arrives, catching Lime's attention as Letty appears in an elegant dress. Lime is rendered speechless by her beauty, while Letty smiles softly as she greets him. While they enjoy the food, Letty keeps on admiring Lime. Elrond and the others display their respect toward Lime, while others express their admiration for Lute. Meanwhile, Fairy teaches the younger elves how to become a proper lady. The banquet continues as the guests enjoy together. Afterwards, Lime goes out to the balcony and takes a break, until Lute notices him and asks if he should really be hanging out by himself. Lime explains that goblins are not used to being in the spotlight, and it is the same for kobolds like Lute. The latter praises his friend, but Lime tries to remain humble. Lute suddenly shares that he does not get bored when he is with Lime, sharing words that never existed before, which is why he wants to keep fighting by his side, rendering Lime speechless. Lute raises his arm and asks how he can become stronger like his friend. Lime agrees, which makes him really happy. Silently, he admits that Lute's potential is probably greater than his, and the only reason Lime is stronger now is because of the knowledge he carries from his past life, though it will be a tough road. Lime asks him if he can keep up, and Lute confirms without hesitation. The two bump their fists as they prepare to train together. Little do they know, Fairy and Letty observe them from inside. Finally, Lime goes to his room, while Fairy shares that it was an eventful night. Suddenly, she notices something about Lime, and he responds that he is just getting his thoughts together before he sleeps. Lime spreads a world map, revealing that he is forming a plan to assault the Demon Lord's castle. Lime notes that the demon continent is ruled over by the Seven Greats. He observes a map and mentions that the lore follows the beginning of Fantasy Frontier, noting that they have already liberated the domains of Dean and Lich. Lime notes that in order to defeat the Demon Lord, they must reach his castle, but doing so would require passing through either the domain of the Dark Diviner Valency or the Archdemon General Shinel. He adds that the enemy army is already aware of his identity because of Lich. Fairy warns that the journey will not be smooth, pointing out the many barriers, inspection points, and dragons flying overhead that could kill him instantly. With both underground travel and flight seemingly impossible, Lime confidently responds that those are not his only options, explaining that he knows the game. He points to an impassable mountain range and reveals that a dark crystal mine runs through it, acting as a direct route to the Demon Lord's castle. When Fairy questions how he knows such information, Lime simply says that he has his ways, prompting her to accept that nothing he says surprises her anymore. Lime then suggests simulating the plan further, revealing that there is a rotation used when rounding up the workers, prompting Fairy to look closer in silence. Lime rolls up the map and declares their route settled for today. While Fairy is relieved that she can finally sleep, Lime lies back on his bed, noting that their path is secured but they now need a war plan. In the room, they sleep soundly tucked under the covers, when glowing blue wisps drift into the room through the window. Lime sleeps peacefully as the blue energy swirls intensely, clearly visible from the outside. The next day arrives. Lime groans in his sleep, then suddenly wakes up with a start. Lime pulls back the blanket, and is shocked to find the goddess in a younger form sleeping soundly beside him. Lime scrambles backward in panic, while she sleepily rubs her eyes. Lime demands to know who she is, while Fairy wakes up annoyed by his yelling. She reminds him to have proper manners, but Goddess ignores the commotion. She calmly notes that he has defeated Ren and earned her praise. The Goddess realizes that this is his first time seeing her in this form, and reveals that she is the one who brought him to this world. Lime looks confused for a moment, asking if she is the Goddess of Goblins, but then he quickly second-guesses himself. Lime notes that her size is completely different, making Goddess accuse him of having insolent thoughts again. Fairy frantically asks how Goddess is able to be in the demon continent. She calmly explains that she can finally manifest thanks to their efforts, but her senses are still off. Lime demands to know why she sneaked into his bed, while Goddess pouts that he missed her cool entrance because he was asleep. Her glowing hand reached out, and Goddess majestically floated as she entered the room while they were asleep. She complained that he refused to wake up no matter what she did, and admitted that she eventually started to feel tired herself. She then realized that she was next to his bed and forgot what happened next. The Goddess clears her throat, declaring that she descended for one reason and addresses Lime as the Messiah of the Goblin. She declares that she will lend him her power for his confrontation with the Demon Lord, while Lime looks up at her in stunned silence. The Goddess rolls back to sleep a little longer, while Lime silently sits in confusion. The next day, Lime thanks the Emperor for his hospitality, but His Majesty gives the thanks back to him. A sharp pain suddenly hits the Emperor, while Elrond explains that he drank too much last night. The Emperor reminds Lime to let them know if he is in a pinch, promising to help him no matter what. Lime instantly asks for a favor now, while the Emperor listens intently. Lime takes out the map, asking if he could grant him permission to enter a territory, shocking them. It is revealed to be a forbidden place. Not even elven royals are allowed to enter. The Emperor closes his eyes and chooses not to ask Lime why he knows the place, explaining that it has been 500 years since the place was sealed off. Lime insists, however, that he wants to go there no matter the cost. The Emperor finally grants him permission, but Elrond is against it. Letty steps forward, offering herself as Lime's guide. Lulf knows that he cannot stop his daughter, and he lets out a smile. He tells her that her mission is to protect Lime. She counts on Lime, while he responds that he expects the same from her. Lute and Fairy observe them from the side, while Lime tells the Emperor that they will be setting off. As they leave, something catches Elrond's attention. He notices the Goddess and wonders if she is with Lime. At the far border of the evil elf empire, the ancient forest lies. It is a savage land where the sun does not reach. For 500 years, it has been feared as a forbidden area, filled with ancient monsters roaming in the dark. Within the fantasy frontier, the highest rarity treasure slumbers, an item that will be indispensable against the Demon Lord's army. Looking at the map, Letty guides the group the right way. The Goddess yawns, while Lime asks if she is really going to follow them. The Goddess confirms, since she went through a lot of trouble to manifest in their world. Lime has been wondering about it and asks what she means. She explains that she requires enough faith and worship to descend. She adds that his achievements contribute to it. Lime recalls that someone can receive blessings from a deity based on the amount of faith they put in. He then realizes that the situation is growing dire since the Goddess descended. She replies that it is not quite to that extent, but the Demon Lord is killing his own brethren. At this rate, the monsters will bring themselves to extinction, adding that Hermes was not like this in the past. She wonders if this is the result of some strange phenomenon, prompting Lime to realize that he is the only one who can do something about it. He suddenly asks what they should call her, and she proudly calls herself God Gob as the Goddess of Goblins. Lime finds it corny, which angers the Goddess. She attacks him after feeling disrespected. Letty watches them and feels threatened by the Goddess. Suddenly, something catches her attention. The group has finally arrived at the Forbidden Land. Letty expresses her shock, seeing the beasts coming out of the woods. Lime notes that the Goddess's theory seems to be happening already. She tells him that she will not be helping them, while Lime tells Lute to prepare. The group prepares themselves, while Lime is determined to get rid of the monsters. The monsters loom from the Forbidden Forest, then giant monsters roar in fury. Lime jumps into the air and spins high above the confused beast. Lime falls on the monster's head, and he uses his sinister analysis to assess the situation. Lime notes that the miasma encroaching upon the forest is causing the creatures to go berserk. Lute replies that he understands and dives straight toward the beast, asking if they just need to rough the monsters up a bit. Lute simultaneously charges forward, his hand glowing with golden energy as he unleashes an explosive counterattack. Lute nods and replies that he is on it. Lime lightly claps his hands and notes how easy it was. Letty watches in absolute awe, while Goddess proudly credits their success to her own divine protection. The group continues to walk through the dark forest. Letty warns the group that this forbidden forest was sealed over 500 years ago. Letty explains that the forest is also called the Lost Wood, and people were not able to return anymore. Lute realizes they have looped back to the same landmark, while Goddess attributes the confusion to the labyrinth effect. Lute worries they will wander forever, while Fairy asks Goddess if she is going to help them. Letty reassures them that everything is fine and she got it covered. She pulls out a green crystal, handed down by her father, which surprises Lime as he recognizes the pendulum of guidance. Letty proudly elaborates on the artifact, until she realizes why Lime knows about it. Lime nervously claims he just happened to hear about the artifact, but it leaves Letty suspicious, calling him a weird goblin. Letty notes that it holds the demon continent's knowledge and lets it guide them. She raises the artifact and starts the incantation. Then light rays through the forest. Lute and Lime are amazed, while Letty tells them to get going. The group continues to walk through the forest, while they fight monsters along the way. Goddess starts to fall asleep, prompting Lime to carry her on his back. Suddenly, Letty points ahead, telling them that they finally made it out to the lost woods. Lime widens his eyes, seeing a massive crater in the middle of the forest. Lute asks them to take a look, and he sees a lone house in the middle. Lime notes that they have arrived at their destination. Deep in the woods lives a great elder of the evil elves, a powerful great sage of the demon continent. Lime stands in front of the door, preparing to knock it. Suddenly, the elder's presence looms behind Lime, and notes that it has been a while since he has had guests. Lime cowers in fear, admitting that he can't even sense his presence. He thinks it was just an illusion. While the elder calls him rude, Lime looks to his side, noting that he can't even keep track of the elder. Suddenly, the elder appears on top of Lime's head. Then he comes down and asks him what business brings him to his desolate place. Lime admits that the elder is much smaller than his presence suggested. He tells him that he wants to save the world from the impending crisis, shocking the elder. Lime confirms that he is going to fight the demon lord. The great elder's name is revealed to be Princey. He is also revealed to be the grandfather of the emperor. He is also a legendary great sage who possesses the most immense wisdom. They arrive inside Princey's wooden house, staring down at it in silence. The elder questions their silence. While Lime did not expect the elder to be this small, he asks if he is really the elder from the legend, and Princey confirms it. Lime tries to be careful with his words and notes that he is different from what he heard. The elder suddenly notices something, asking Letty if she has brought an elven wine. Letty brings it to use as a cooking ingredient or a disinfectant in the lost woods. The elder tells her to open it up already, while Goddess looks at them silently. The elder happily drinks and loves his first taste of elven wine in centuries. Letty proudly boasts that while elven brewers are a disagreeable bunch, their wine is the best. Lute clarifies if they have found the right guy, and Lime confirms it. The elder is satisfied with the drink, but Lime's expression suddenly hardens. He asks the elder if he could teach them to manipulate darkness, prompting Princey to repeat his request. He takes a look at Lime, telling him that he is already doing it. Lime explains that they need to learn what goes beyond that and master that secret art. The elder is shocked that he knows about it. It is known that Dark Physical Boost is a skill of the highest parity that allows one to dramatically increase their body's level of darkness. He realizes having it would stop him from depleting his darkness like he did against Dean. He concludes mastering this technique is the optimal solution and shortest path to overcoming the game. Once the Demon Lord attacks, the hidden village of goblins and the evil elf empire will be completely wiped out. He looks at the great sage, determined to learn his secret art no matter what it takes. He closes his eyes and firmly states that it is absolutely impossible to teach it to an outsider. The elder tells him that he has already decided not to take another apprentice. Then he tells him to leave his place. Lime pauses for a second, then he questions if it is because he was betrayed by his old apprentice, the Demon Lord. The elder looks at him in shock, while Lime adds that after the sage imparted his secret art to his promising apprentice, everything changed. Lime points out that the giant crater outside is the exact aftermath of when he tried to stop the Demon Lord's fall to evil. The elder is shocked and wonders how Lime knew about it. Lime withholds the information, warning the elder that his former apprentice is trying to dye the demon continent red in a sea of blood. Lime begs the elder to entrust his secret art to him, rendering him speechless. He suddenly sees a familiar presence in Lime, who turns out to be the Demon Lord when he first approached the elder. He closes his eyes and realizes it is another case of divine guidance. The elder would normally refuse, but he finds Lime interesting. Letty expresses her excitement, but the elder notes that he first needs to see if Lime has what it takes. He shows his intimidating aura and tells Lime to go outside to test him, which is exactly what Lime wants. Lime and the elder face outside. The girls wait on the sideline, while Lute becomes their referee. Lime's inner thoughts reveal that if he is turned down here, all of his efforts up until now will be for naught. He pins his foot on the ground, then launches himself forward. Lime braces himself and the elder widens his eyes. The elder vanished, but Lime realizes that he is only erasing his presence again. An incoming strike comes from behind, which Lime manages to dodge barely. The elder looks impressed, while he admits that he can barely sense him at all. The elder disappears again, while Lime knows that he needs to find a way to see through it. He prepares to try something, then he launches himself into the sky. Lime summons his wave of darkness, surrounding the arena with dark energy. He tries to locate his darkness instead of his body, until he finally manages to see the elder. Lime slams his sword on the ground, but his method did not work. The elder calls him naive, shocking Lime after hearing his voice. The elder tries to strike him and says that it is finally over. Suddenly, Lime disappears, but it turns out that he used his presence to bait him. Lute recognizes the same technique that Lime used at the magic tournament. Lime appears all of a sudden, prompting the elder to notice him mid-attack. He uses his fingers to stop the sword, triggering Lime to pause in shock. The elder throws the sword away, frustrating Lime without anti-weapon. The elder admits that even though it was only for an instant, Lime managed to get the best of his senses. The elder calls him a mere goblin, only to confuse Lime. He finally decides to take him as his apprentice, and his training begins tomorrow. He tells Lime to be here in the morning, while he thanks him instantly. The group celebrates and expresses their happiness for Lime. The next day, Lime is shown doing handstand push-ups while balancing the elder on his feet. Sweat pours from his face as he strains against the ground, until he finally falls into the ground. The elder explains that everything existing within this world is constructed from 6 primary elements. He points out that many monsters mistakenly believe they have an inexhaustible supply of darkness. He states that to accomplish this, they must start by training the foundations of the body and mind. He looks at Lute on the left and asks if he is a kobold, and he seems to be proficient in darkness manipulation. He raises a finger with a sly expression, telling the student that this training should be incredibly easy for him then. Lute is shown upside down, while Lime notes that after a full week of training, his base stats have shot up significantly.